Chapter 5:13. After practicing fist techniques, it was time to learn archery. After archery, it was time to learn riding. After riding, it was time to learn leg techniques, swordsmanship, whip. The bow that Big Face gave her was for military use. Normally, only big men could pull it. The first time Chu Qingyan touched it, her fingers were already scratched. This body belonged to the soft and tender type. Once she touched the bowstring, her fingers were cut and bleeding. However, she did not frown once. She still maintained her posture and pulled the bow again and again. This forbearance made Big Face very satisfied. He taught her even more attentively. After a whole day, Chu Qingyan went through all the classes. Aside from being tired from the heavy burden on her body, what she gained was that there was always someone better than her. These fierce cavalry were famous because they had the ability. However, this kind of achievement relied on their own hard work. If it was not a person with a strong will, they would not be able to endure the fierce cavalry's training method. Chu Qingyan admired them even more. Because they had more perseverance, patience, and strength than ordinary people. So no matter how hard and tiring the training was, she did not say it out loud. Instead, she suppressed this pain in her heart and turned it into motivation. Falling down was for the sake of getting up better. Just like this, day after day passed by. In the mountains, there was no cold or heat. Every night, snow would rustle on the ground. The next day, snow would cover the entire mountain range, so much so that the mountain was sealed for a long time. During this time, Chu Qingyan woke up early and slept late. She did not relax at all. Her nerves were tense as she practiced martial arts. Her body was faintly changing. For example, her body was growing taller and her mental state was different. She did not notice these, but the people who watched her work hard to grow step by step felt that her body was gradually emitting a dazzling light. They were sincerely envious and admired her. Because to be able to persevere under the fierce cavalry's training for so long, it was already very rare. Moreover, to be able to make these fierce men give her a thumbs up behind her back was even rarer. So, with effort, there will always be gains. Although the schedule was tight, Chu Qingyan was already enjoying it. After training a mountain, Liu Guang gave her a few more mountains, each taller and steeper than the previous one. At that time, she heard Flowing Light rubbing his chin and saying sneakily, "Only here with so many mountains can I be willful. Little princess, you are so lucky. Lucky my ass." She was teased by Qinghua again and again and fell off the plum blossom pile. She ate a few mouthfuls of snow, but she heard him laughing at her from the pile. "Little Princess Consort, your lower body isn't steady enough. You still need to work harder. Unstable my ass." Then, in her anger, she would chase after him and beat him up. Although she was beaten black and blue every time, her fist technique had unknowingly improved. She was already very proficient in drawing the bow and loading the arrow. She had gone from missing the target at the beginning to not missing the target at all. Although she still couldn't hit the target with great precision, she could at least hit the target within 50 meters. Because her arm strength was not enough, Big Face asked Mu Ling to help him make a round iron ball for her to play with. Chu Qingyan still remembered that when she took the iron ball back to the room, she threw it casually and smashed a hole in the table, which scared Xining. Cicada was a man of few words and started to fight as soon as he came up. He was not ashamed of bullying the weak at all. Every time, he would beat her to the ground and then hook his finger to make her stand up again. Therefore, in Cicada's swordsmanship class, she kept repeating the action of being beaten to the ground, but each time, she persisted a little longer than the previous time. Bang! Chu Qingyan was thrown out of the plum blossom pile again. Her left face was swollen. She spat out blood, then stood up and jumped on the plum blossom pile. Again. Cough, cough. Falling heavily to the ground, Chu Qingyan held the long sword against the ground and slowly stood up. Looking at her torn sleeve, her eyes flashed with excitement. Again. Swish! When she flew up the mountain, Chu Qingyan was attacked by Flowing Light again and again. When she fell, she turned around and found a safe place to rest and then said to him, again. Therefore, during that period of time, when she was constantly beaten to the ground by them, or when her practice was not satisfactory, she repeated these two words the most. Little by little, it was progress. She always told herself this. Pain and happiness. The paint on the longbow had been worn off by her, but she still put it on the bowstring one after another. As for the uncooperative horse, it had been trained by her to be obedient. It did not dare to go west, and it did not dare to go north. Her archery and riding skills had improved to a certain extent. On the training ground, even if she was bleeding and sweating, she would never cry. However, when she returned to the room and closed the door, she could not help but moan and sob to her big ice cube when she saw the wounds all over her body. Sob, sob, my little arms and elbows are bruised again and again. They are so ugly, sob, sob, my palms have calluses. Can you imagine that this is the hand of a young girl? Sob, sob, big ice cube, training is so tiring, I want to be comforted, I want to be hugged. In front of others, she was an indestructible woman. When she was injured, when she was bullied, she did not make a sound. In front of others, she was a weak little girl who was afraid of pain. She acted coquettishly, complained, and only wanted to rub in his arms. Then, the next day, she would walk to the training ground full of energy. She could be weak, she could be afraid, she could complain, but she would only show this side of her to the people closest to her. Because of the venting after she returned home and closed the door, Chu Qingyan did not have any negative emotions in her heart. When she trained during the day, it was twice the result with half the effort. However, she did not know that because of her actions, the fierce cavalry suffered unspeakably during this period of time. They did not know why, but the young princess had gradually entered a good state, but the master's expression was getting worse and worse. Then, they received more and more punishment. During this period of time, the young princess's muscles and bones were strong, she was energetic, and her steps were light. On the other hand, they were thin, their energy was not enough, and their steps were erratic. Who did they offend? The fierce cavalry howled to the sky in their hearts. However, they did not know that the real culprit was training unhurriedly under their eyes. Chu Qingyan also did not know that her unintentional actions caused them to suffer unspeakably at night training. If she knew, she thought that she would cry harder. At this time, she had faintly revealed the nature of a black-bellied person. The days flew by, and it was already the day to leave the snow mountain. However, what followed closely was an extremely important test for Chu Qingyan. It was to finish and review the training during this period of time. Chapter 5:14. Tomorrow, we will be leaving for Shang country. Before that, we, the fierce cavalry, will be holding a test to assess the little princess consort's training during this period of time. The earth spirit was dressed in black. As the host of the test, he had a dignified appearance, fair and strict. On the training ground, there were not only Shaolai cavalry, but also Chu Qingyan's parents, Qing Yanluo, Yi Lingfeng, and others. They also wanted to see how much progress Chu Qingyan had made during this period. They were looking forward to seeing whether or not this person, who was constantly creating surprises for others, would break through their imaginations and bring them surprises again today. Equestrian and archery skills, and lightness skills were placed last. Because they had to move to another place, this place was not suitable. Therefore, the test topics were fist skills, swordsmanship, leg skills, equestrian skills, archery skills, and lightness skills. Both sides can stop here. You can start now. Turin said. Little princess, sorry to offend you. Standing in front of her was Qing Guo. Chu Qingyan cupped her hands, please. As soon as she finished speaking, Chu Qingyan took the lead to punch. Her fist was powerful, but it was caught by Qing Guo. Then, he raised his hand and punched. There was a big gap in strength between men and women. She did not choose to fight with force. Instead, she used her body's flexibility to slide under his body and then punched again. The two fought for a long time. Chu Qingyan began to lose, but she was not in a hurry. Her expression was still calm. Just when Qing Guo was about to win, Chu Qingyan suddenly raised her leg and swept across his legs. He was caught off guard, and Qing Guo was defeated. Little princess, you didn't follow the rules. We are competing with fist skills. You can't use leg skills. Qing Guo was not convinced. Chu Qingyan got up and withdrew her leg. She brushed the dust on her clothes and smiled slyly. Did you say that I can't use any moves other than fist skills? It's right that I won. Qing Guo was stunned. Indeed, there were no rules, but he taught her fist skills. This young princess consort didn't play her cards according to common sense, which was why he had fallen into her trap. However, she was right about one thing. The purpose of a competition was to win. She had won, and this was the result. Xiao Su looked at the little guy who was smiling like a fox and couldn't help but curve his lips. The battlefield was ever-changing. No one would wait for you to finish your fist art and then ask you if you wanted to use your leg art. Only those who were flexible and adaptable could survive to the end. Cicada stood in front of Chu Qingyan. In his hand was a black iron sword that weighed 50 kilograms, while in Chu Qingyan's hand was a soft sword. When Cicada saw the sword in her hand, he could not help but frown. A soft sword against a black iron sword. She was overestimating herself. Chu Qingyan ignored his disdain. With a flick of her wrist, the flexible sword immediately emitted a sharp aura. Both of them attacked at the same time. Cicada had been by Xiao Su's side for nearly 10 years. His martial arts had been taught by Xiao Su. After so many years of fighting and risking his life with him, his swordsmanship was fast, accurate, and ruthless. It was aimed at the fatal parts of his opponent. If he was not careful, his moves would be enough to kill his opponent. However, at this time, the two of them had already exchanged more than 10 moves. Chu Qingyan used her soft sword to move like a dragon and snake in his black iron sword. Although she was at a disadvantage, she did not show any signs of defeat. Cicada went from looking down on her earlier to being completely focused at this time. The little princess's sword moves were taught by him. However, she had already learned the heaven and earth sword and the fire sword. She had a good control of them. Now, after his training, she had merged these sword moves together. It seemed to have become her own swordsmanship. It had their ruthlessness and also her unique gentleness. Xiao Su's gaze was locked on her every move. After a moment, he could not help but smile. This little girl was very smart. She knew how to use gentleness to overcome strength. Otherwise, with her short cultivation in half a year, it would not be enough to defeat Cicada's swordsmanship over the past decade. After 30 moves, both of them put away their swords. In this assessment, Cicada had set the standard for her to be able to complete 30 moves under his sword. She had done it. Cicada looked at the person in front of him and smiled. The little princess has a very high level of comprehension. If not for the short training time, I'm afraid that in time, the student will surpass the master. A few days ago, she could not even withstand 3 moves under his hands. Now, she could do this. He had to say that she had improved very quickly. Chu Qingyan touched her head, feeling a little embarrassed. In fact, in terms of swordsmanship, she was not as good as Cicada. It was only because she was good at thinking and used her strengths to attack his weaknesses. If they exchanged a few more moves, she would definitely be defeated. The second round of assessment ended, and the third round of assessment followed closely behind. She competed in leg techniques with 7-star. Standing in front of her was a delicate and pretty youth. If his identity was not mentioned, anyone would misunderstand him as a young master from some aristocratic family just by standing there quietly. Chu Qingyan had also been deceived by his appearance before, but when he taught her cultivation techniques, she had a completely different understanding of him. A knife was hidden behind a smile, and his attacks were ruthless, especially his legs. She heard that when he was fighting with Big Ice Cube, he had sent the enemy's deputy general's head flying with one kick. There was no need to describe how formidable he was. Because of Big Face's example, 7-star allowed her to use all of her skills. Chu Qingyan felt a lot of pressure from his calm composure. In this case, it would be a close-range fight. She could win against Big Face earlier because she caught him off guard, but 7-star had already figured out her moves, which was clearly disadvantageous to her. Moreover, her disadvantage was that she was not as strong as a man, but her advantage was that she was petite. The two of them fought. Chu Qingyan raised her leg to attack 7-star's lower body very quickly. She couldn't fight a protracted battle and had to end it quickly, or else she would be at his mercy. As though he saw through Chu Qingyan's thoughts, 7-star chuckled and raised his leg to meet hers. The two of them exchanged 3 moves before separating. Chu Qingyan felt a dull pain in her leg. This person was truly sparing no effort. She gritted her teeth and met him again, but this time, she didn't just use her legs to fight. She also used the fist techniques she learned from Big Face. Because Chu Qingyan made it clear from the start that he wouldn't use fist techniques against her, Chu Qingyan barely managed to turn the tables. But not long after, Chu Qingyan was beaten to the ground by 7-star. Because it was just a competition, 7-star restrained his strength when he attacked, so Chu Qingyan wasn't injured. Although she lost, she was already very satisfied that she could persevere until now. Meanwhile, 7-star had a whole new level of respect for her. This subordinate didn't expect little princess to be so proficient in the leg techniques this subordinate taught you in such a short period of time. This subordinate agrees with Cicada's earlier words. As long as you are willing to study and practice diligently, you will surpass little princess in the future. They had spent several years to achieve this, but the little consort had shattered everyone's expectations. She had surpassed them in a year and a half in a few days. It could be said that she was much more impressive than them. Chu Qingyan had endured their mockery these past few days, so she felt a bit awkward when she heard them praising her in all seriousness. They should just mock her, she would get used to it. Chapter 5:15. Even though Chu Qingyan lost in the 3rd round, she still received everyone's affirmation. In fact, winning or losing this test was not very important to them. The most important thing was to see how much their little princess had grown in this period of time. But it was clear that after these 3 rounds, Xiao Lai-chi was satisfied. It was reasonable, but also not reasonable. Inverted scallion. See, I told you that our Kai is amazing. Do you understand now? Father Chu was holding a plate and eating with relish. He was also watching with relish. There was no trace of the nervousness he had when his daughter was taking the test. Xiao Su replied mildly. He had always known, which was why he endured the heartache as he watched her cry out in pain in his arms day after day. She cried as she threw herself into his arms, but did not say how difficult it was. When she left his arms, she had already wiped her tears and resolutely threw herself into the 2nd day of training. Sometimes, she was so strong that it made one's heart ache. But, a fledgling had to learn to fly. The only thing he could do was to let her go and let her fly. It was rare for Yi Lingfeng to go out today. For the past few days, he had been alone in his room. Now that he saw Chu Qingyan whom he had not seen for a few days, he could not help but turn to Xiao Su and say, "I realized that you really found a treasure." His tone was teasing, and he was in a rare good mood. Hearing this, Xiao Su calmly accepted it. Yi Lingfeng didn't expect him to be so thick-skinned, but his eyes suddenly dimmed. In fact, he didn't need to be envious of others. He had also met a treasure before, but he didn't cherish it and was instead chased away. He could only blame himself for reaping what he sowed. Perhaps sensing his good friend's desolation, Xiao Su thought for a moment and said, "The mountains have been sealed by the heavy snow for the past few days." The news from Shang Kingdom did not arrive in time. "If there is news of Miss Dugu, I will inform you immediately." Okay. There was no need for thanks between good friends. Yi Lingfeng nodded. Next was the combination of horsemanship and swordsmanship. The venue was outside the courtyard. The rule was that Chu Qing was riding a horse and shooting at a moving target. All arrows had to hit the bullseye to pass. Chu Qingyan leaped onto the fierce horse. It was said that this horse was the most ferocious of all the mounts that Xiaolai rode. Back when she was learning horsemanship from Sweet Potato, she had spent close to 2 days just to tame this horse. She had used carrots and grass to entice it. She had put in a lot of effort to make it happy before she finally managed to tame it. It was not easy. At this time, she was carrying a longbow on her shoulder, and a quiver was hanging on the horse's back. There were 10 long arrows in the quiver. She then patted the horse's back and smiled. "Buddy, it's up to you now." The horse whinnied and rubbed against her hand obediently. "Oh, I really didn't expect the little princess to have such a trick up her sleeve. Among us, except for Sweet Potato, I haven't seen anyone who can make Hung Yu lower her head." Big Face sighed. "That's because I taught her well." Sweet Potato interrupted from the side, feeling proud. "TCH, you taught her well, but can it be better than the fist technique that I taught the little princess?" Green Gourd said with his chin raised. "Yes, yes, yes. You taught her the best." Even the master was defeated by his disciple. Sweet Potato couldn't help but mock him. Green Gourd snorted. "That still proves that I taught her well. The student has surpassed the master, right?" Everyone burst into laughter. "All right, stop arguing. Let's watch this round of assessment first." The brawny man interrupted them, indicating for them to watch Chu Qingyan's performance. At this time, the moving targets were already moving. Those targets were tied to the animals that Xiaolai rode over. There were rabbits, foxes, minks, leopards, birds. As long as there were animals in this mountain, they were all caught by them. But there were only 10 of them. If Chu Qingyan accidentally let them escape, it would mean that she didn't pass the assessment. When the targets moved, Chu Qingyan also moved. She pulled an arrow, pulled the bow, and released the arrow. Her movements were fluid and smooth. In an instant, the target on the cheetah that ran the fastest was shot by her. Her apprenticeship was successful. Chu Qingyan held the reins with one hand and clamped the horse's belly with both hands. She urged Hung Yu to quickly run towards the targets. In the process of running, she quickly pulled the bow and shot 3 arrows in a row. All of them hit the targets. She picked up the arrows quickly, aimed accurately, and released the bowstring decisively. This performance made everyone nod. Even if they didn't know the results of the target shooting, seeing her performance on horseback already made Big Face and the others satisfied. Moreover, she was skilled in riding the horse. Whether it was temporarily turning the horse's head or slowing down, Hung Yu was very cooperative. This made Sweet Potato, the real owner, couldn't help but feel jealous. His Hung Yu wouldn't abandon him like this, right? She shot 10 arrows in a row, all of them hitting the bullseye. Chu Qingyan handed in a satisfactory equestrian archery answer sheet. Big Face and Sweet Potato expressed that they were very proud. This was their disciple. Chu Qingyan sat on the horse and turned to face Xiao Su with a bright smile. There was only 1 round left. Qinggong went up the mountain. Everyone came to the highest peak here. Chu Qingyan pulled up her sleeves and tightened her belt. Then she nodded to Flowing Light and jumped up. Xining, who was watching, couldn't help but cover her eyes. It was too scary. What if Master fell down? As soon as this thought came to her, she spat on the ground. She couldn't curse Master like this. At this time, everyone was silent. Xining looked up again. At this time, the weather was clear and the clouds were not as thick as before. When she looked up, she could see the white figure easily jumping on the cliff. In the blink of an eye, she had flown a long distance. From the foot of the mountain to the mountainside, the figure slowly shrank and finally became a black dot. Then, when she went up, she could no longer be seen. Xining was stunned. Ching Yenluo, who was standing at the side, smacked her lips. This little girl is really extraordinary. After a while, someone said, young Princess Consort has reached the top of the mountain. It took her less than half an hour. That year, it took me a month to do it. Young Princess Consort is really strong. As soon as the voice fell, someone exclaimed, she's coming down. Chu Qingyan didn't stay on the top of the mountain for long. After jumping to the top, she turned and jumped down. Her feet stepped on the uneven parts of the mountain and quickly fell down step by step. The corner of her clothes fluttered and there was only the sound of the wind in her ears. She narrowed her eyes and skillfully sensed the direction of the wind. This was what flowing light taught her. She could use the force to fight and also use it to fly. The white figure was getting closer and closer to the ground. Xiao Su looked up and saw her descending from the sky. Her clothes fluttered, her smile was beautiful, her eyes were bright, and her tied black hair fluttered behind her. Stepping on the air, she was like a fairy from the ninth heaven. His little phoenix finally spread her wings. Chapter 5:16. She somersaulted in the air and landed lightly on the ground. She was tender and cute, and her makeup was like jade. But when she opened her mouth to speak, her efforts were broken. She ran all the way and shouted, I did it, Big Ice Cube. She didn't dare to show the joy in her heart after passing round after round of assessment, because she warned herself that there was still the next round. Arrogance brought harm, modesty brought benefit. So when all her joy was suppressed and exploded at the last moment, she was only left with tears of joy. It was as if her whole body was suspended in mid-air and only landed at this moment. Xiao Su opened his arms and welcomed his little phoenix back to her nest. She threw herself into his arms and jumped up and down. I did it, Big Ice Cube. She spoke incoherently and was very excited. He patted her shoulder lightly and smiled. You did it. She finally completed the first step of what she wanted to do for so long. She remembered the feeling of powerlessness in the past, where she could only watch him die. That feeling, she didn't want to experience it again. In the future, when he was tired, she could let him turn his back to her and then protect him as he moved forward. At this time, she could finally tell him, don't be afraid in the future, I will protect you. There were too many things she wanted to say in her heart. She made a vow in her heart in the medical hall, her heartache when she saw him being tortured by the poison, and her helplessness and determination when she saw her powerless hands. But at this time, she couldn't say a word. It was because she did it, so those regrets in the past didn't exist anymore. Xiao Su could feel the surge of emotions in her heart, but he didn't say anything and just let her hug him tightly. At this time, Turin and the others saw this scene and revealed a knowing smile. When they first met, she was still a childish and delicate little girl, and her eyes were full of innocence. They felt that the marriage arranged by the retired emperor was too terrible, and they all wanted to break into the palace with swords. Then, they saw that their master treated her differently. He was tolerant and took care of her in all aspects. At that time, they felt that she didn't deserve such treatment from their master. Then, as the two of them gradually got along with each other, they saw a different master in front of outsiders. He smiled, had blood, and was no longer the cold and arrogant King of England. It turned out that on her body, there was a kind of warmth that made the master reluctant to let go, making up for the affection that the master had not felt for many years. However, they still felt that such a young lady was not worthy of the master they revered in their hearts. She was too young and inexperienced. She could only be protected by others and could not help the master share any danger. His master's position was controversial, especially because of the emperor's favoritism towards the fourth prince, the empress' pressure on his master step by step, and the schemes of Consort use faction in the court. If his master had to be distracted to take care of a child, it would do him no good. Moreover, her family was only in dire straits, so she would not be of any help to his master. They were still looking at her with an expectant gaze. But later, their master was wronged and imprisoned. Her wit, after their master was poisoned, her courage and calmness, on the road to find the medicine, her intelligence and steadiness, as well as the recent training, her persistence and forbearance. Little Princess Consort was using her actions to show everyone step by step. She was not a little white rabbit that could be pinched by others. She was an eagle that could spread her wings and fly for thousands of miles. If they said before, they were still dissatisfied with her or considered her. Until today, they were completely convinced by her. She was bright, magnanimous, intelligent, brave, calm, indifferent. She was the mistress of their Shaolai cavalry. Chu Qingyan did not know that today, her position in the hearts of the Shaolai cavalry had changed. She just wanted to sleep in a corner. These few days of hellish training had consumed all of her energy. But tonight, there was a celebration banquet, which could be considered as a perfect ending to this devil training. They had to hurry the next day, so there was no hard liquor on the table, only the wild game that Chu Qingyan shot and tea. Little Princess Consort, let us toast you. These few days, we have offended you, please be magnanimous. Big Face took the lead, raised his teacup, and said to Chu Qingyan, I am too stupid. If there is anything that made you guys frustrated during the training, please be magnanimous. Chu Qingyan stood up, raised her wine cup, and smiled. Everything is in the tea, let's toast. Everyone shouted. Chu Qingyan raised her head and drank it. It was not wine, but it was stronger than wine. The tea was not intoxicating, but it was intoxicating. Not only did she gain good martial arts skills, but she also gained so many instructors. Chu Qingyan felt that this trip to the snow mountain was really fruitful. Shaolai cavalry's temperament was straightforward. He said whatever he wanted, good looks, good martial arts, great figure. If they were in the modern world, they would be charming city elites. Chu Qingyan smacked her lips. She was really lucky, the men by her side were handsome, the women were beautiful, she could feast her eyes every day. The cold moon had just risen, covering the snow with a layer of cold light. At this time, in the courtyard, the sound of laughter resounded through the world. The group of people had not been so lively and relaxed like today for a long time. Not far from the wooden house, there was a tall figure standing in the wind. Little snow fell from the sky, brushing past the purple cloak and floating down, circling a few times on the ground before landing. The owner of the cloak was currently looking at the brightly lit wooden house. In front of the door, there were two large red lanterns swaying with the wind. A faint halo flashed in front of his eyes, blurring his phoenix eyes. He had arrived here a few days ago and was also trapped by the snow, but he knew that Xiao Su's group was in the mountain, so he was not worried. Then he saw the little lass training early every day. When she climbed the mountain for the first time, he sat on the opposite side of the mountain and watched as her palm was cut by a sharp stone. He watched as she frowned and did not know what to do. He watched as she was in pain but did not give up. At that time, he only had a thought, to see when she would give up. But the result was really surprising. She persevered, from being clumsy to understanding the way, to being proficient, and finally using it freely. And the most amazing thing was that she fell from the sky with great agility. This was a strong woman that made him have a whole new level of respect for her. But this kind of woman was always on guard against him, this kind of feeling was really uncomfortable. At this time, his gaze returned to the wooden house in front of him. Under the moonlight, it seemed to be plated with a layer of light. What an annoying bustle. His thin lips overflowed with a tone of disdain. Young master, the temperature is getting lower and lower. Do you want to go back first? The wind was very strong, so Xuanqi Zimo could not hear what his master was saying. He gathered his clothes together and shivered as he asked. Let's go back. The bustle in the room had nothing to do with him. The cold moon, the cold wind, and the cold snow suited him. Chapter 5:17. The next day, the group sat on the carriage and set off for Shang country. The snow was still thick, but the weather had turned for the better. It was not as gloomy as it was a few days ago, and only a few snowflakes fell occasionally. After they left, Mu Ling and the rest tore down the wooden house. In the blink of an eye, the wooden house was razed to the ground. Chu Qingyan turned back to look at the plum forest that held her deep memories for the past few days. Her eyes were filled with reluctance. You can't bear to leave? Xiao Su saw that she kept looking back at the carriage and asked. Chu Qingyan nodded. Yes, although I didn't stay there for long, I grew up there. I can't bear to leave. During this period of time, she devoted herself to training and did not have time to stroll around the plum forest. But training in the morning, returning at night, competing with Lu Guang in the plum forest, shooting arrows on horseback, competing with Cicada in swordsmanship, etc. Those were very painful back then, but thinking back now, there was a different feeling. Growing up is painful and difficult, but when we look back at those days, we feel very fulfilled and moved. Chu Qingyan put down the curtain and leaned against the wall of the carriage. She said to Xiao Su emotionally. Moved by what? Moved by herself, who tried so hard to persevere and not give up. If she gave up at that time, she would not be who she is now. You're right. Xiao Su did not comment. Now that he thought about the past, the scars faded, the pain was forgotten, and the unwillingness and resentment slowly disappeared with the flow of time. There were not many memories left, but they were precious. Big Ice Cube, who taught you martial arts back then? Was it tough when you were training? Have you ever been injured before? Was it painful? After going through this period of hellish training, Chu Qingyan had a lot of feelings about martial arts. Putting herself in his shoes, she became curious. She had never heard Big Ice Cube talk about his past. The person who was still slightly sad just now had already thrown those negative emotions to the back of her mind. This little guy's emotions came and went quickly. It was in line with her self-proclaimed belief that contentment brings happiness, and that living simply is happiness. Xiao Su did not intend to hide it from her. My master, known as the half-moon old man in the martial world, was once my father's advisor and an official in the imperial court. He usually seems to muddle along, but when it comes to martial arts, the book of changes, the art of war, and so on, he is very strict. Half-Moon Old Man was not called Half-Moon Old Man before, but Half-Moon. His real name was unknown. He was male, and liked females. When he was 30 years old, he was traveling in Sichuan Kingdom and met the 5-year-old Xiao Su. He felt that this kid was talented and smart, and if he did not take him in as a disciple, it would be a waste of such a good seedling. Moreover, if he was not taken in as a disciple, it would be the kid's loss. Thus, when he heard that this person was the first prince of Sichuan Kingdom, he resolutely entered the court examination and became one of the Sichuan emperor's advisors. At that time, the status of advisors was too low and could not come into contact with Xiao Su. Thus, he worked hard and finally became an official in the imperial court. Later, he found out that officials were not allowed to enter the harem without a summons, so Half-Moon Old Man disappeared in a fit of anger. However, on the second night of his disappearance, he appeared in Xiao Su's palace by climbing the wall. Towards this man who suddenly appeared in front of him, Xiao Su was very calm. After half a month of pestering, Xiao Su reluctantly agreed to become his disciple. It has to be said that this half-moon old man was an expert. He was proficient in music, equestrian archery, fist techniques, saber and sword techniques, the 5 elements, the 8 trigrams, astronomy, geography, zither, chess, poetry, calligraphy, and painting. Thus, Xiao Su followed him and learned everything. He was good at everything, and in the end, the student surpassed the master. Half-Moon Old Man was both gratified and worried about this. He was gratified that his disciple did not disappoint him. He was worried that when his disciple grew up, he would not want him as his master. If that happened, he would become a lonely old man. He was still counting on his disciple to take care of him in his old age. However, after he finished his apprenticeship, Half-Moon Old Man told his friends that it was his disciple who kept pestering him to become his master. He saw that this child's parents did not love him, so he reluctantly accepted him. Xiao Su was very calm about his master's ability to reverse right and wrong. As a result, this master who fell from the sky had stayed in his palace for 5 years. Other than himself, no one else knew about it. Even the secret guards in the palace could not sense his presence. It could be said that his martial arts had reached the acme of perfection. Then, when he was 10 years old, Half Moon Old Man left. Not long after Half Moon Old Man left, he welcomed the first big change in his life. The palace was burned down. Other than him, everyone in the palace was engulfed in fire. When his master heard the news, he rushed back to the palace. If not for his master saving him, he would have died in bed. Then, his master accompanied him to plan for the future. He accompanied him to form the Shaolai cavalry. He accompanied him to nurture his power. After that, he went to the border to participate in the war. His master also left him to travel the world. All of the above was the complete story that Chu Qingyan learned from Half Moon Old Man and Big Ice Cube when he met him. All of the stories were pulled back to reality. It's common to get injured while practicing martial arts. You'll get used to the pain. But if you're smart enough, a lot of pain can be avoided. When Xiao Su finished speaking, Chu Qingyan looked at the wounds on her claws that had not healed. She silently hid her claws in her sleeves. It seemed that she was not smart enough. Then, Big Ice Cube, tell me about the history of the Shaolai cavalry. Chu Qingyan changed into a comfortable position and half leaned on the couch. Her face was serious and puzzled. Xiao Su nodded. His eyebrows slightly raised. He said in deep thought, 10 years ago, war country sent an army to invade Sichuan. They took over many cities. They burned, killed, and pillaged. Basically, those cities were all massacred. Most of the Shaolai cavalry were children that my master and I saved at that time. At that time, the warg army were barbarians. They treated killing as a game. They killed a group of people every day. Sometimes it was young men, sometimes it was women, sometimes it was children. At that time, his master had said that he wanted to bring him to understand the situation in Sichuan. In reality, he wanted to see how strong the warg people were. After bringing him to sneak into those cities, the two of them unintentionally saved a group of children who were about to be massacred. These children's parents had already been killed by the warg people. They had nowhere to go. Suddenly, he had the idea of building his own power. In the end, he selected those who were willing to stay and follow him, and they became the Shaolai cavalry that was feared by the world. Chu Qingyan did not think that these seemingly heartless Shaolai cavalry had actually experienced such cruel things when they were young. Their families were destroyed, and they were homeless. Qingyan. Xiao Su suddenly spoke. Here. She looked up at him in confusion. Chapter 5:18. Xiao Su looked at the regret on her face and narrowed his eyes. Do you find them especially pitiful right now? Big Ice Cube's eyes seemed to see into her heart, but when she looked back at his eyes, they were bottomless. Hearing his words, she nodded without refuting. It was heartbreaking for them to experience such a huge change at such a young age. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the person in front of her shake his head at her. Then, when she was puzzled, he said, the strong don't need sympathy or pity. What they need is someone who can lead them forward. Too much emotion won't solve the problem. Having said that, Xiao Su paused and reached out to stroke her long hair. The corners of his eyes curved. So, when it's time to be merciful, be merciful. When it's time to be resolute, be resolute. This way, you will not let down those who pledged their lives to follow you. Chu Qingyan was slightly taken aback. Was Big Ice Cube trying to give her some pointers by saying those words? Sympathy and pity were useless because the strong didn't need them. Just as she said before, only when one was strong enough would one not be trampled on by others. She suddenly understood that everyone had their own self-esteem, and the hot-blooded men like Xiao Lai Chi were even more so. They did not like to talk about their pain. They only thought about what to do in the future. Pity would only make them feel embarrassed and not grateful. Treating them as ordinary people was a form of respect for them. Chu Qingyan recalled her life in the modern world. There were such people who kept talking about their own experiences and then tried to win the tears and sympathy of others. Their hearts were satisfied. I understand. What Big Ice Cube wanted to tell her was that instead of lamenting, it was better to do something useful. The little rascal's intelligence allowed her to understand without wasting his breath. This made him very satisfied. By the way, Big Ice Cube, young Master Yi's mood has not been right for the past 2 days. Is he alright? Recently, she had been focused on practicing martial arts, causing her to neglect the people and things around her. Now that she suddenly thought of it, she asked. He's fine, but his spiritual power is a little weak. Xiao Su withdrew his hand and picked up a book beside him, flipping through it casually. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh when she heard that. What the hell is this? Back then, elder sister Dugu tried so hard to make her presence known in front of him, but he tried his best to ignore her. Now that she's gone, he's finally come to his senses. It's really frustrating. Xiao Su said casually, he will only learn from his mistakes when he falls. But this fall was a bit too tragic. I don't even know where big sister Dugu is. I think her heart must have been broken and she doesn't want to see him again. She rested her chin on her hands and tilted her head slightly. She watched as his slender fingers flipped through the pages of the book and clicked her tongue. Then it can only be said that he was blind and reaped what he sowed. Big Ice Block, who was a professional at tricking his good friends, silently added another stab to Yi Lingfeng's heart. Chu Qingyan's gaze moved from his fingertips to his eyebrows and eyes. His eyebrows were sharp and his eyes were dark. Looking from the side, her Big Ice Block's disguise looked quite good, okay? Actually, Xiao Su's disguise was indeed very ordinary. But why did Chu Qingyan have such a strange feeling at this moment? Beauty was in the eye of the beholder. It was just that she had never noticed it. At this moment, she suddenly had a question and threw it to the only person of the opposite sex beside her. Big Ice Block, if you were young Master Yi and met a girl like Dugu Qing, what would you do? Xiao Su didn't care about the little fellow's question. This assumption is baseless. I refuse to answer. But how could Chu Qingyan let go of such a chance to gossip? She took the book from his hand and pestered him to answer. Perhaps because of her pestering, Xiao Su had no choice but to comply with her wishes. He straightened his clothes that had been torn apart by the little fellow and answered slowly. First, I'm not Ling Feng. It's not my style to flirt. Second, if the assumption is true, then I won't accept it, because I won't give such a girl a chance to get close to me. Third, I have a sense of propriety. I'm also very accurate in judging people. I won't be like Ling Feng, who can't see his own heart and can only regret it in the end. Chu Qingyan was stunned by the 3 points in a row. After digesting it, she couldn't help but sigh that the Big Ice Block was really so rational and rigorous. He treated matters of the heart as if he was analyzing the battle situation. Once he was sure, he would immediately take action, neat and tidy, without any hesitation. But she liked the Big Ice Block's way of doing things. Not only could he avoid hurting others, but he could also avoid getting himself into trouble. It wasn't like the modern world where many people liked to flirt with others. This way, they would delay others and also cause others to look at them coldly. The gains didn't make up for the losses, so why bother? But a long time later, when the two of them were talking about this quarrelsome pair, Chu Qingyan remembered the conversation the two of them had and she couldn't help asking. Big Ice Block, you said that you were very accurate in judging people. Then when did you see your heart clearly? Actually, she just wanted to know when he had fallen in love with her. Women just like to think of ways to get any information from their lovers about their feelings for them. I've always been able to see it clearly. A certain person replied. Then what about me? His answer was the same as not answering at all. She couldn't help feeling a bit anxious that she had been exposed. It was a pity that she had already said it and couldn't take it back. At this time, she saw him squint his eyes as he leaned closer to her. Didn't I already keep you by my side? Chu Qingyan didn't react when she heard this. After a while, her eyes widened. You, how is it, my little princess consort? Has this prince's taste always been accurate? One glance is a lifetime. He reached out and she fell into his arms. Approved. One glance is a lifetime. This sentence was very, very pleasing to her ears. Let's change positions tonight. Approved. Then she was pushed down. Cough, cough. She pulled the scene back. If young Master Yi was half as clear-headed as you, there wouldn't be today's unforeseen event. Chu Qingyan sighed. Xiao Su's gaze was indifferent. Unfortunately, he's not. How can a bird that hides its feet bear to stay? Unless he figures it out himself. But it's too late for him to figure it out now. Big Ice Block had tricked his good friend again just now. Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue. She liked Big Ice Block's sharp criticism, but she felt a bit sorry for Duguqing. If she knew that Yi Lingfeng had come all the way from Jiang to Shang just to find her, who knew how she would feel? She might be touched, but she might also be indifferent. Although Duguqing looked quite soft and cute, once her heart was hurt and her bottom line was crossed, she could be more ruthless than anyone else. She could be compared to Yen Luo. The furthest distance in the world wasn't between you and me. I don't know. It was only after you left that I saw through my own heart. Chapter 5:19. After chatting with Big Ice Cube for the entire morning, Chu Qingyan began to feel sleepy. In the end, she fell asleep while talking. Suddenly, there was no sound beside him. Xiao Su couldn't help but turn his head to look at her. He saw that the little fellow had already closed her eyes and fallen asleep. Her obedient appearance was always able to touch the softest part of his heart. However, the posture of leaning against the wall of the carriage seemed to make her uncomfortable. Her eyebrows moved slightly. Xiao Su picked her up and placed her on the couch. He pulled the brocade quilt from the side and covered her with it. Her petite body curled up. One of her hands unconsciously grabbed his wrist as if she had found support. Her cheek rubbed against the back of his hand, and then she continued to sleep peacefully. If someone had told him a year ago that there would be someone by his side so peacefully, he wouldn't have believed it. His body had a murderous aura that others didn't dare to approach. Adding to his cold personality, no one dared to come within 3 feet of him. But when he met her, everything from the past was broken. The first time he saw her, she wasn't this tall. She was carrying a bamboo basket and was thin and small. At that time, he knew that this little fellow was different from her peers. When her father wanted to take him back, she hesitated. That hesitation made him see her vigilance and consideration. But in the end, she couldn't dissuade her father and could only agree to save him. She was meticulous, courageous, and kind. If it wasn't for her saving him back then, he was afraid that there wouldn't be a Xiao Su in this world. It was because of this that when he found out that she was the young miss of the Chu family who was bequeathed to him by imperial grandfather, he had the idea of keeping her. Because he was not only curious about her, but also had a trace of selfishness. He should have let her go. Then she wouldn't have suffered so much with him. But it was because of this selfishness that he could live a carefree life now. Although his poison hadn't been cured, he didn't take the snake's kiss poison to heart. Reality proved that his decision back then was right. Just as he lost all hope for kinship, she suddenly turned around and hugged him. Then, she whispered in his ear, "Big Ice Cube, don't leave me alone. I'll go with you. I'll accompany you so that you won't be lonely." He smiled faintly, his eyes filled with thoughts. He pulled his hand away from hers, pulled the blanket up, and placed it on her forehead. During this period of time, he had seen all her efforts. He knew that she was doing it for him, but it was also because of her that he did not stop the fierce cavalry from training her. She wanted to protect him and stand by his side when he was in trouble. However, the reason why he supported her in learning so many martial arts was so that she could protect herself when he was not around. Walking in this world, one's life is full of setbacks. The only thing one can rely on is oneself. Therefore, he hoped that she could be independent. The person in his sleep seemed to feel the gaze of the people around him. He shrunk his neck slightly and buried his whole body under the blanket. However, after a while, as if he was suffocating, he pulled the blanket down to get some fresh air. Xiao Su looked at her actions and couldn't help but chuckle. In front of outsiders, she was strong and composed. But in front of him, she was different. This was enough. Xiao Su picked up the book beside him and continued to flip through it. The sun was clear and the clouds were white. On both sides of the plum blossoms, snowflakes fluttered, and horse hooves clattered. This was a carefree and leisurely day. At this time, it was easiest for people to relax. This place was leisurely and carefree, but that place was dark and difficult to see. Have you found my royal brother's whereabouts? Xiao Ho slowly propped himself up and narrowed his eyes at the subordinate kneeling in front of him. It was hard to tell whether his tone was cheerful or cold. Yes, I ordered people to search along our border and found traces of the Shaolai cavalry in Junlan. I immediately sent people to investigate and found out that the King of England had once appeared in the Junlan Imperial Palace. Later, I used a certain method to learn from the eunuch who served gentleman Sheng that the King of England had once stayed in Junlan for a period of time. Later, he went to Jiang Kingdom, the man in black reported. He had previously guessed that the coup d'état in Junlan was very familiar with the methods. Now, he finally confirmed that it was done by Xiao Su. He really understood his royal brother. In just a few days, he had changed the political situation in Junlan for many years. It was admirable. Xiao Ho thought that if Xiao Su was willing, this huge Sichuan would have fallen into his hands long ago. Unfortunately, he didn't have the ambition. Where are they now? Xiao Ho asked. We spent a few days searching for the King of England's whereabouts in Jiang Kingdom, but we only know that they showed their faces at the border of Jiang Kingdom. There's no more news. The man in black lowered his head, and there was some regret in his tone. Xiao Ho raised his eyebrows and thought carefully for a moment. Do you know why they went to Junlan and Jiang Kingdom? They said they were looking for some herbs, but I haven't found out what kind of herbs they were looking for, the man in black continued to reply. Herbs? Xiao Ho thought of the poisoning of his eldest brother and had a vague answer in his heart. He curled his lips and smiled. Such a strong poison couldn't take his life. He's really tough. The King of England has a highly skilled doctor who has never shown his face. Maybe he saved the King of England. And the young girl I met at Lawn Manor is probably Chu Qingyan. She was also looking for herbs at that time, the man in black guessed. No matter who did it at that time, it's a fact that he's still alive. Xiao Ho put one hand between his eyebrows, and there was light in his deep eyes. Since they went to Junlan and Lawn Manor in Jiang Kingdom, I'm afraid they haven't found the herbs they need. At this point, the corners of Xiao Ho's mouth curled into a sneer. Send a group of people to guard the border between the Jiang Kingdom and the Junlan Kingdom. If you see them passing by, kill them without mercy. But we have to make preparations for both sides. Send another group of people to the Jiang Kingdom to see if they have left. It's best to check the border of the Jiang Kingdom as well, crossing 3 countries in a row. It doesn't mean that they won't go to another country. Yes. The man in black nodded in response. Since there's already news of my imperial brother, we should make a few more people happy. Only then will it be lively. After all, this is a good thing. So many people are paying attention to his news. Today, you spread the news that my imperial brother is still alive and well. I don't believe these people can sit still. A bloodthirsty look flashed in his eyes, making people think of a black panther walking in the deep mountains and forests in the middle of the night. It was gloomy and cold. Yes, sir. The man in black immediately went to make arrangements. Xiao Ho lay comfortably on the couch. He leaned sideways as if he had no bones. He supported his chin with one hand and smiled faintly. You can hide for a while, but you can't hide forever. Eldest brother, I want to see if you're lucky or I'm faster. Chapter 520. What? He's still alive. When Imperial Concubine Moon heard this news, she was completely shocked. She originally thought that after such a long time had passed, no one in Western Xian had been able to find him. She thought he was dead, but now this news suddenly came out. This made Imperial Concubine Moon feel both pity and anger. I've received reliable news that the King of England is indeed still alive, and he's not in the Sichuan. The cloaked man who had appeared in the Moon Palace before appeared again. His voice was still low, and it was hard to tell if he was male or female. Damn it, so many people are plotting against him, but he still managed to escape. I don't believe it. Senior brother, help me this time. You must make sure that Xiao Su dies in a foreign land and never comes back to the Sichuan. Make those officials in the imperial court give up completely. Consort, you said viciously. Recently, her father had suggested that His Majesty make Ranner the crown prince. Unfortunately, those in the imperial court who supported Xiao Su refused to budge. I really don't know what those ministers are thinking. Xiao Su has disappeared for nearly 3 months. Xiao Yao is always sloppy and doesn't look like a prince at all. Xiao Ho is so sickly that it seems like he'll die at any moment. Other than Ran, who else has the qualifications to inherit the throne? The more Imperial Concubine Moon spoke, the angrier she became. The cloaked man wanted to raise his hand to comfort her, but in the end, he put it down without a trace. I've already sent people to the Jiang Kingdom to search. There are people from the Moon Palace all over the Jiang Kingdom, the Shang Kingdom, and the Nansung Kingdom. Don't worry. The cloaked man comforted her. When Xiao Su's corpse really appears in front of those people, they won't stir up trouble anymore. Xiao Ran is still young, so it won't be a problem to wait for a while. The most important thing is for him to learn the way of the emperor, so that he won't be criticized for a long time. As soon as his words fell, Imperial Concubine Moon's expression relaxed. She looked at the cloaked man, her eyes sparkling with tears. She gratefully said, Senior apprentice brother, it's all thanks to you. Otherwise, we would have failed again. I said that I wouldn't sit by and do nothing about your matters. Don't worry, Xiao Ran will definitely become the Dragon Emperor one day, and you will become the most honorable woman in the Sichuan. He knew that this was her wish. As long as he was alive, he would help her fulfill it. Although senior brother's words were not very impassioned, as if he was discussing the weather, in her ears, it was as if there was a thunderous momentum, making her go wild with joy. Yes, to become the most honorable woman in the Sichuan. Imperial Concubine Yu's eyes flashed with a determined light. She wanted to ruthlessly trample that slut Liang Yuan beneath her feet and completely uproot the Liang family. She wanted these people to see that there would be a day when she, Fu Yu, would step on their heads and reach a high position. Seeing her expression, the cloaked man's eyes flashed with a complicated look. Junior sister had changed, but as long as she was still the same person, his junior sister would still be around. Don't worry, pretend that nothing happened. If anything happens in the future, I won't have anything to do with you. The cloaked man instructed. Consort Yu nodded. Then, she seemed to have thought of something. Oh right, senior brother, I remember that you have a son. How old is he now? I haven't been paying attention. See what he likes. Pick something that suits his taste and bring it back for him. He should be 16 this year. He doesn't have a fixed place, and he has a strange taste. You may not have the things that he likes here, so you don't have to pay attention to him. The cloaked man remembered that a few days ago, he had asked him to help him exchange for the ginseng fruit, but he didn't expect that the ginseng fruit had been bought at a high price. He was furious, but it was a pity that this kid was far away in another country and didn't pay attention to him. If this kid had bought the ginseng fruit, he could have given it to junior sister today. It seemed that senior brother didn't care much about this son of his. After Imperial concubine Moon realized this, she was secretly overjoyed. You should rest early. I have to go back and instruct my subordinates to do something. The cloaked man finished speaking and prepared to leave. Senior brother. Consort, you called out to him. When he turned to look at her in confusion, she pursed her lips and smiled. Thank you. The beautiful fairy in the Life Moon Palace smiled, the dimples on her cheeks rippling. His eyes were filled with her sweet smile, just like 20 years ago, when the two of them met for the first time. She had bumped into his heart with a rush of excitement. In the blink of an eye, 20 years had passed. The world had changed, but she seemed to be standing there. Time flowed by, but it didn't leave a trace on her face. Take care. The cloaked man turned and strode away. His heart was bound again. He was afraid that if he didn't leave, he would say something that he shouldn't. Watching senior brother leave, the smile on Consort Yu's face faded. She leaned back on the couch, her expression smug and vicious. Liang Yuan, Liang Yuan, even if Xiao Su isn't dead yet, don't be so smug. There will always be someone who will take his life. He's been poisoned. Very good, if the poison can take effect, it will save me a lot of manpower. At this time, in Zhaoyang Hall, Empress Liang received a secret letter from her father. After her eyes swept over it, her face was filled with ecstasy. Her cheeks, which had been thin for the past few days, finally regained some color. The heavens really have mercy, the heavens have mercy, ah. Luo Yun, who was serving on the side, hadn't seen her master reveal such an expression in a long time. Although she didn't know what had happened, she also smiled happily. What did Lord Left Prime Minister say in the letter that made Empress so happy? At this time, Empress Liang was in a very good mood. She turned to Luo Yun and said, Father said that he already has news of Su. Right now, he's safe and sound. Although he's been poisoned, he's currently searching for medicinal ingredients in another country. Luo Yun cried tears of joy when she heard this. Master, you see, this servant has long said that His Highness is blessed and will definitely be fine. You don't need to worry. You haven't been eating or sleeping well these past few days and have lost a lot of weight. If His Highness returns, he will definitely feel distressed for you. Luo Yun's words made Empress Liang's heart burst with anger. If he was worried about this consort, he would have sent a message back long ago so that we wouldn't have to worry about him. Does he know that during this period of time, because his whereabouts are unknown, many of father's ministers have been roped in by those old fellows from the Fu family? How much effort will it take to gather these connections in the future? Her master's words made Luo Yun sigh. Shouldn't she be concerned about His Highness's health at this time? Previously, she had heard that His Highness had been seriously injured. She didn't know if he had recovered or not. Perhaps His Highness is worried that his whereabouts will be exposed. Presumably, His Highness will return once the matter of the poison is resolved. Luo Yun comforted her. Luo Yun, serve me with brush and ink. This consort wants to write a letter. If we find him, have father's people give it to him. Tell him that if he doesn't return, he can prepare to collect this consort's corpse. Empress Liang had been very angry recently. She was suppressed by Fu Yu, and the women in the inner palace weren't easy to deal with. They only knew how to take advantage of the situation, and she had suffered quite a bit in the past few days. Yes. Luo Yun immediately went to prepare. Su, if you want to abandon Imperial Mother, don't even think about it. No one knows a son better than his mother. Although they hadn't spent much time together, he was still her flesh and blood. Empress Liang narrowed her eyes and gave a cold humph. Chapter 521. Inside the palace of Shang country, a figure stood with her hands behind her back. Your Highness, the people we sent to Jiang country couldn't find the people you mentioned. The man in black stood behind her and reported. You couldn't find Qing Yan and Xiao Su? The person turned around and raised her eyebrows. It was none other than Du Guqing, whom Chu Qing Yan and the others had been looking for. She was dressed as a man in a bright yellow crown prince robe. Her hair was tied up neatly with a white jade crown. Her eyebrows were painted black, giving her a masculine aura. As he spoke, he purposely lowered his voice. If others heard him, they wouldn't be able to tell whether he was a man or a woman. Yes, my men found out that they had left the Jiang country 10 days ago and were heading towards the Shang country. According to their pace, they should have already reached the border between the Shang country and the Jiang country. However, due to the heavy snowfall, I haven't been able to find their exact whereabouts. The man in black continued to reply. If it wasn't for the snow, they would have brought them back to Shang country to meet the crown prince. How unfortunate. Du Guqing sighed faintly. During this period of time, she had been busy with her father's funeral and secretly treating her brother's injuries after returning to Shang country. Her father had passed away, her brother was in a coma, and her mother was weak. Previously, she was on the verge of breaking down. However, there were treacherous officials outside and evil concubines inside. In order to appease the court, the first thing she did after returning to the palace was to pretend to be her brother. Because the two of them seemed to be cut from the same mold, she often wore his clothes and pretended to be him to attend the Imperial College's classes. This matter had never been discovered by her imperial father, imperial mother, or the officials, so when she imitated her imperial brother, it was simply perfect. Hence, she spread the news that eldest Princess Du Guqing had been assassinated and was in a coma. At this moment, she was Du Guqing and her brother was Du Guqing. She had to settle her father's funeral before her brother woke up, stabilize the court, and appease the people. If no one came out to preside over the situation, one could imagine what kind of disaster would befall Shang country. For 10 days, she forgot to eat and sleep and focused on the court. Yesterday, she had just sent her father to the imperial mausoleum. Today, she remembered that she had sent people to Jiang country. She knew that Chu Qing Yan and the others were looking for an herb called love grass. When she first heard this name, she found it familiar, but she did not think too much about it. However, when she was checking the treasury a few days ago, she realized that this name was on the list. Thus, she recalled this matter and immediately sent people to look for Chu Qing Yan and company. Unfortunately, she received this news today. Continue to send people to keep an eye on their whereabouts. If you see them, have them come to the palace to find me. Du Guqing instructed. That was all she could do, and she didn't know if she could make it in time for Xiao Su's poison to take effect. Your Highness, it's bad, the Empress has fainted. The palace maid stumbled over, her face full of panic. Du Guqing's face paled, and she quickly led people to her mother's palace. Chu Qing Yan, who was sleeping soundly in the car, had a dream. She was walking in a devastated place. She kept walking, but she couldn't reach the end. She was a little anxious. She started to shout for Big Ice Cube, Daddy, Mommy, Xining, but no one responded to her even after she shouted herself hoarse. Just as she was about to lose all hope, her long skirt seemed to be tugged by something. The more she walked, the harder it became. She couldn't help but stop and look back. She saw a little doll with grass growing out of its head sitting on her dress. It looked as if it was playing with water. When it saw that her dress had stopped moving, it raised its head to look at Chu Qing Yan. When it saw her face full of shock, it smiled innocently. Hello, Jijie. My name is Love Grass. After it finished speaking, it smiled and squinted its eyes. The grass on its head swayed with its movements, which was very cute. Chu Qing Yan was scared out of her wits by the doll in front of her. Her limbs were made of white carrots, and there was grass growing out of her head. Could it be that she had eaten too many carrots in the day and was unlucky enough to encounter these carrots? Although she was frightened, Chu Qing Yan quickly regained her composure. You said you're called Love Grass. That's right. The one you've been looking for is Chow Chow. Chow Chow is me. The affectionate grass doll's laughter was as clear as a silver bell. Chu Qingyan's eyes were filled with tears as she threw herself at him. Han Qing, do you know how long I've been looking for you? Do you know how much I need you? I've finally found you. Boo-hoo, my big ice cube can be saved. He can be saved. She spoke incoherently when she was excited, and the love grass doll was almost suffocating from her hug. You still haven't found me? Someone went to look for you, but you weren't there. She was waiting for you. The love grass doll finally managed to snatch its neck from her hands and looked at her with teary eyes. At this moment, Chu Qingyan also looked back at it with tears in her eyes. Then where are you? Who's waiting for me? The royal family of Shang country. The love grass wanted to say more, but its body started to turn transparent. Chow chow, don't go. Sensing that the love grass was about to leave, Chu Qingyan anxiously tried to make it stay. However, she saw it sweetly bid farewell to Chu Qingyan in front of it. Chow chow is leaving. Sister, remember to come and play with me. Meow, ow, alala, oh haha, it's so fun. Goodbye, sister. Chu Qingyan listened to the love grass farewell song and had the illusion that it was withering in the wind. However, she came back to her senses and immediately threw herself at it. No, she couldn't let it leave. It hadn't said who was waiting for it. Ow, she threw herself at it. Chu Qingyan hugged the body in her arms and smiled proudly. However, when she touched it, she felt that something was wrong. The love grass body was very soft, as if it was made of water. However, the body under her hands was a little stiff, but it felt very elastic. Have you touched it enough? Above her head, a cold voice fell into her ears. Chu Qingyan subconsciously replied, no. If you don't tell me who it is, I won't let you go. Xiao Su. The person above her head seemed a little helpless. Why was he waiting for her? Wait, why didn't this voice sound like the love grass soft and cute voice? Chu Qingyan instantly woke up and raised her head. Then, she saw the big ice cube looking at her with a dark expression. Her hand was still tugging at his clothes, and his collar was torn open. As if she was frightened, Chu Qingyan jumped 3 feet high. Then, her head hit the roof of the car, and then she fell onto the couch. Her feet tilted and she fell onto the wall of the car. Chu Qingyan immediately covered her face. It's over, no sooner said than done. A hand reached out from the side and grabbed her wrist, pulling her towards him. Thus, she fell into his arms without any mishap. In the past few days, there had been no news from Hualing. Chu Qingyan thought that it must have been affected by the snow sealing the mountain. However, now they only needed to cross the last mountain range to reach Shang country. Chapter 522. Chu Qingyan couldn't care less about the awkwardness of sitting on his body. She covered her head with tears in her eyes. She really used all her strength to jump up and it wasn't light at all. She could feel a big bump on her head and it hurt so much. Seeing her rabbit eyes, Xiao Su's gloominess dissipated. He placed her on the bed and ordered someone to prepare a hot water bottle. He then placed it on her head and applied it to it. Did you have a nightmare? Earlier, when he was sitting by the side reading a book, he heard her stretch out her hand and cry. He thought that she was dreaming of something and wanted to wake her up. However, he did not expect that as soon as he was in front of her, she would jump up and hug him tightly. She even cried and said that she did not want to go. Chu Qingyan was rubbing her eyes. She didn't feel much pain because there was a big ice cube on her head. When she heard his question, she then remembered what happened in her dream. Although it sounded like nonsense, she vaguely felt that it seemed to be hinting at something. Therefore, she told Big Ice Cube everything that had happened in her dream in full detail. Big Ice Cube, that love grass told me that it's in the Shang country's imperial palace. When we get in touch with Hualing, ask him to send people to look for it, okay? Xiao Su frowned slightly. The little girl had such a dream. It was obvious that what she thought about during the day was what she dreamed about at night. She desired the love grass more than he did, and his heart softened. Although it sounds like a fantasy story, I'll do as you say. Whatever she wanted, he would give her. Compared to what she had done to him, this was the only thing he could do for her. Chu Qingyan's eyes reddened. Big Ice Cube didn't ask anything and believed her. She was very touched. Actually, this was just a dream she had. The more one wanted something, the more they would dream about it. Only Big Ice Cube would believe her without reservation. She leaned on his shoulder and slowly smiled. Big Ice Cube, it's been hard for you to fool around with me. I won't. He didn't stop rubbing her head. His eyes became gentle because of her words. In this life, to be able to meet someone who could go crazy with her, fool around with her, and risk everything with her was already a blessing. A person's life was so short. If she couldn't live for herself, she would have wasted her time. At this moment, Turin sent a secret letter. It was from Hualing. Xiaosu opened it and his expression became a little strange. Chu Qingyan immediately went over. What happened? Xiaosu looked at her deeply and handed the letter in his hand to her. Chu Qingyan did not understand what was going on. She reached out and took the letter. She lowered her head and read it seriously. However, when she saw the words in the letter, her eyes suddenly widened. She stared at the letter in disbelief, as if she wanted to see through the letter. She then turned to look at the person beside her, who had already calmed down. She said incoherently, Big Ice Cube, my dream is real. The love grass is really in the Shang Kingdom's palace. Aha! Xiaosu looked at her excited and incoherent manner, and the corners of his lips unconsciously curved into a smile. It seems like the saying that dreams can predict the future is not completely wrong. However, if this skill had come earlier, we would have been able to find out the whereabouts of the ice crystal flower and love grass earlier. Then, we would not have been like ants on a hot pan, running around in circles. Chu Qingyan's voice sounded regretful at the end. Xiaosu patted her on the shoulder and lectured her in a doting tone, you have to be content with what you have. It's better to have something than nothing. Chu Qingyan felt that Big Ice Cube was right. She nodded vigorously. It's good that it's here. In the future, call me the little expert who can predict the future. Meow, awu, alala, ohaha. Xiaosu shook his head helplessly as he listened to the strange tune that she learned from somewhere. The carriage in front kept making noises. One moment it was cheering, the next it was laughing. Sitting in the carriage behind them, Yilingfeng felt a little emotional. Previously, when he brought Xiaosu and the rest back to the capital, there was also a chirping sparrow beside him. At that time, he found her annoying and did not pay much attention to her. But she still persevered and climbed into his carriage. Miss Dugu, men and women should not touch each other. You should not sit in the same carriage. You should get off quickly. He had a good temper and was a gentleman. At that time, he could not help but get angry because of her. But she looked wronged. Big brother Lingfeng, I told you not to call me miss all the time. It's so distant. Look, I didn't even call you young Master Yi. So you can call me Little Qing. That's what my family calls me. He felt like a flock of crows flew over his head. Why was it that when they talked about things, they were always not on the same page? Later, when they met again, her words and actions were appropriate and she treated him like a stranger. Only then did he realize that she was just deliberately changing the topic. Little Qing, this name did sound better than Dugu Qing. But at that time, he felt that this name was very vulgar. Did he change? Yi Lingfeng did not understand. At this time, he turned his head and saw Father Chu pinching the corners of his eyes and mouth with both hands, making faces at him. Little lunatic, are you regretting it? Father Chu changed his position and continued making faces at him. It was so ugly that it could shock the heavens and make ghosts cry. Then he seemed to ask casually. As if someone had seen through his thoughts, he turned his head and did not look at him. No. If you don't regret it, how do you know that I'm asking you about that matter? It can be seen that you're still thinking about that matter. Father Chu changed his face again and was having a lot of fun. I'm not thinking about Dugu Qing. Yi Lingfeng was stunned when he said this. He saw Father Chu put down his hand and look at him with disdain. I didn't say that it was about little Qing. Look at you, you've exposed yourself. A cross appeared on top of Yi Lingfeng's head. Was this Father Chu stupid? Why was he speaking in such a roundabout way but so logical? And being despised by Father Chu, he felt very embarrassed. Okay? You're thinking too much. Yi Lingfeng did not want to talk to him anymore. Pretend again. Father Chu snorted, but he did not see any reaction from Yi Lingfeng. Father Chu glared at him. I came to tease you out of kindness, but you ignored me. I'll ignore you too. Saying this, Father Chu climbed down from the carriage. Advise Jun Mo not to cherish the gold-threaded robe. Advise Jun Mo to cherish his youth. If there are flowers to pluck, pluck them straight. Don't wait until there are no flowers to pluck. Father Chu's voice drifted in with the cold wind. Yi Lingfeng could not help but stiffen. If there are flowers to pluck, pluck them straight. Don't wait until there are no flowers to pluck. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. At this time, less than 10 li away from their carriage, dozens of assassins dressed in white were hiding in the snow. Under the cover of the snow, they blended in with the ground. From afar, no one would know that an inescapable net had been set up here. Chapter 523. If everything goes well this afternoon, we will reach Shang country. Chu Qingyan spread out the map on the table and pointed at the river on the map. Then, we will abandon the carriage and take a boat. We will travel through the night and follow this long river. Then, we will reach the nearest town to Shang nation's capital. On the third day, we will enter the capital. 5 days later, it would be New Year's Eve. 10 days later, it would be the deadline for the snake kiss poison. This was supposed to be the new year that everyone was looking forward to. But now, everyone was feeling depressed. As time passed, the atmosphere became heavier. Only Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su's carriage was relatively relaxed. Chu Qingyan's jesting and Xiao Su's calmness made it impossible for them to talk about the deadline. The horses galloped, the wind blew, and snow fell. The whole world suddenly darkened. But fortunately, they were on the mountain path between two mountains. No matter how strong the wind was, it was blocked by the mountain wall and could weaken the wind. Earth Spirit rode on a horse, bringing Xiao Lai along as they traveled slowly in front. In front of them was boundless white snow, and as far as the eye could see, there was only white. Occasionally, a few birds would look down and then fly away. If they could not cross this mountain this afternoon, they would have to sleep in the wilderness. The fierce cavalry held the reins in their hands and looked around, guarding against the sudden attack of someone with bad intentions. After traveling for a while, Turin felt that the terrain here was dangerous. If someone set an ambush, it would be disadvantageous for them. Thus, he raised his hand and stopped everyone from moving forward. They did not take a step forward or make a sound. It could be seen that Xiao Lai's cavalry was well trained. Cicada, Lu Guang, go and check it out first, just in case. Turin ordered the two people beside him. Yes. After the two of them responded, they squeezed their horses' bellies and rode forward. The carriage suddenly stopped, causing the people in the carriage to be confused. Chu Qingyan opened the curtain and asked, Big Face, what happened? Why did we stop? Big Face immediately replied, Sir Turin, send someone to investigate the situation in front of us. If there are no abnormalities, we will continue to move forward. Chu Qingyan nodded and lowered the curtain. At this time, Xiao Su suddenly looked out of the window. Chu Qingyan could not help but ask, what's wrong? There's killing intent. As soon as Xiao Su finished speaking, the sound of swords clashing could be heard outside the car. The two of them looked at each other and immediately got out of the carriage. At this moment, Xiao Lai's cavalry had already split into two groups. One group surrounded the carriages while the other rushed forward. At this moment, Chu Qingyan could see clearly that at the very front, Cicada and Flowing Light were already fighting with several assassins in white, while the burly man and the others had already flown forward to provide support. However, when the burly man and the others arrived, dozens of white figures suddenly flew out of the snow and divided into two groups. One group pounced on them, while the other group focused on them. These people had all planned this beforehand. If the Earth spirits hadn't sent people to scout ahead, they would have been caught off guard and surrounded by them. That would have been a very passive situation. However, Flowing Light and Cicada's scouting led them to move ahead. It could be said that Xiao Lai's cavalry was one step ahead of them. On the battlefield, the one who seized the initiative had a lot of influence. Yi Lingfeng, Mr. and Mrs. Chu, Qing Yanluo, Ethereal, and the others got out of the carriage and gathered around Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su, making it easier for Xiao Lai's cavalry to protect them. What's going on? Yi Lingfeng looked at the two sides fighting and could not help but ask in surprise. Their whereabouts must have been exposed, Chu Qingyan guessed. Then, she suddenly turned to Xiao Su and said, "Big Ice Cube, I'll leave my parents to you." While everyone was confused by her words, Chu Qingyan had already drawn the soft sword at her waist. This soft sword was a weapon that Big Ice Cube had asked the wood spirit to make for her to hide and carry. It was the same as Big Ice Cube's white sword, but a little smaller, so it was more convenient for her to use. The soft sword whistled in the wind. Chu Qingyan looked back and smiled at him, then jumped on the horse and flew toward the assassins in white. Kai Kai, Kai Kai, Mrs. Chu was so scared that her face turned pale. She shouted for her to come back. Swords had no eyes, and it was too dangerous. Mr. Chu, who was next to her, put his hand on her shoulder and said with a smile, "Dan Nyang, don't worry. These brats are no match for Kai Kai. Take a good look at her killing in all directions." Really? Mrs. Chu was still very worried, but she calmed down a lot after hearing her husband's words. Xiao Su watched as the person rode the wind away, and his lips curled up. "I'll watch you kill in all directions from here. Gold would always shine." Seven Star chuckled when he saw the young consort flying down. "Young consort, you came to join in the fun. That's good as well. You can also test the results of your training during this period." Chu Qingyan winked at him. "You can't miss out on this fun." When the assassins in white heard the two talking and laughing as if there was no one else around, they felt like they were being looked down upon, so their attacks became even fiercer. They were outnumbered, but the fierce cavalry wasn't easy to deal with. The two sides were even and didn't fall into a disadvantage. The addition of Chu Qingyan also boosted the morale of the fierce cavalry. They were all trained by the young princess consort, and they could not afford to drop the ball at such a crucial moment, lest the young princess consort look down on them. Thus, the fierce cavalry, who were used to using 30% of their strength, suddenly transformed into a pack of ferocious wolves. They killed gods and Buddhas with an unstoppable momentum. Compared to the fierce cavalry's bravery, Chu Qingyan was overflowing with gentleness. In the beginning, she had been dealing with these people because she didn't know which cultivation method she should use first. Also, she needed to figure out the other party's strength. Thus, these people in white inexplicably became Chu Qingyan's practice targets. After using a set of sword techniques and a combination of fist techniques and leg techniques, Chu Qingyan felt that it was about time to use her strength. She lifted her leg and kicked, causing a person in white to fall heavily to the ground. From the sound of it, 3 of his ribs were probably broken. She blocked the other party's saber with her long sword and took advantage of the other party's surprise to punch his face with her left hand. That person clutched his face and retreated. It looked like his nose was broken. She didn't kill anyone and basically beat them until they lost their ability to fight. But at this time, the brawny man at the side couldn't stand it anymore. With a wave of his saber, he cleanly dealt with one person and flew to her side. Young consort, this is a battlefield, not a game. Only one can live. If we are soft-hearted, then the ones who will die in the future will be us. The brawny man said sincerely. Chu Qingyan was stunned when she heard this. She only wanted to make them unable to resist and forgot the rules of this world. The strong preyed on the weak and the survival of the fittest. But she came from a world ruled by law. Other than stepping on a few ants, she had never taken a life. Now, she couldn't help but look behind her, looking for him. Chapter 524. When she found his figure in the crowd, Chu Qingyan's face was filled with shock. 3 white-robed men wielding swords attacked Xiao Su at the same time, but there was not a single fierce cavalry beside him. 3 swords, 3 different directions, 3 vital points, all attacking at the same time. The sword moves were crafty, even if he could dodge one, he would not be able to dodge the other 2. Chu Qingyan's eyes widened, she did not care about anything else, she flew into the air, her sword moving straight, she flipped and landed in front of Xiao Su. Her sword trembled and slashed across the white-robed man in front of her, causing a bloody wound to appear on his body. His white robes were dyed with blood, it was very clear. She frowned slightly and raised her leg to kick another white-robed man's chest. In a moment of desperation, she used 80 to 90% of her internal strength, causing the white-robed man to be unable to dodge in time and fly out with blood spurting out. The last person had already been taken care of by Xiao Su. After killing 2 people in 2 moves, Chu Qingyan looked at her hand and closed her eyes. She had said before that she would protect the big ice cube. Since she had chosen this path, she should have thought of what she would encounter on this path. Just now, if she had not acted in time, then the big ice cube would have already, what she had run away from in the past, was now laid bare in front of her, she could no longer avoid it. The hesitation in her eyes completely disappeared. When she finally opened her eyes again, there seemed to be an extra layer of something in her eyes that was cold and threatening. The brawny man was right, being merciful to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. If she did not kill them, they would come to kill her. Although there was no enmity between them, but since their positions were different, they were destined to fight to the death. Since that was the case, then she would let it end quickly. If these people were to return alive, then it would be very disadvantageous for them. I'm sorry, Big Ice Cube. From now on, I will start to fulfill my promise. She looked up, the golden light in her eyes was so bright that no one dared to look straight at her. When the white-robed man in front of her saw her expression, he was slightly stunned. When he reacted and wanted to stab at her, he found that he could no longer move. He lowered his head and saw that his chest had already been stabbed. Chu Qingyan drew her sword. Without any hesitation, she walked past that person and headed towards the center of the battle. Turin, protect His Highness and everyone. She coldly ordered. Then, using her qing gong, she soared up like a phoenix spreading its wings. She spun around and landed on the ground. Not a single person was spared. Turin looked at the leaving figure of the little princess and was slightly stunned. The little princess seemed to be a little different. But when his gaze fell on his master, he saw a strange expression on his master's face. Turin seemed to think that he knew something. Just now, the 3 white-robed people didn't even have a chance to get close to Master, but Master had made a hand gesture for them to not go forward. Just as he was scratching his head in confusion, he saw the young Wang Fei land in front of Master like she was flying and kill 2 white-robed people in one breath. It was different from how she had dealt with the white-robed assassins with ease and composure because he saw the murderous intent on the young Wang Fei. This was the first time that he had seen such a desperate killing intent from the kind and gentle little princess. So, just now, Master was planning to force the young Wang Fei to take the step out of her heart. Who would have thought that their master, who was known as a ghost, would be so cunning in a blink of an eye and a trick in a raise of a hand? In the blink of an eye, their little princess consort had been schemed against by their master. But Turan felt that master used this trick very well. If the young Wang Fei couldn't walk out of her heart, then he might not be able to do it again in the future. He had to say that master had done a good job of forcing her. Those who were able to stand at the top were never soft-hearted people. Turan held his sword and guarded the crowd. He looked at the people who flew and waved their swords without mercy. It was as if his eyes were red from killing. Young Wang Fei, don't blame master. All of this, you will have to go through in the future. It's just that today was brought forward. Xiao Su's face was as calm as water as he looked at the red-clothed girl in the snow. At this time, her clothes were fluttering in the wind. Her whole body was like a raging flame sweeping through the enemies. Wherever she went, red flowers dyed the snow. Her eyes were cold, and her beautiful face, under the contrast of white and red, showed a touch of enchanting, dazzling the world. This outstanding and neat swordsmanship made the fierce cavalry very satisfied. The disciple that they had trained did not let them down. But only Xiao Su's expression was cold. Ruthless, if she could kill with one sword, she would not use a second sword. In fact, she was still soft-hearted. She couldn't bear to see them suffer the pain of death. But Xiao Su already felt very gratified. At least she didn't have any psychological burden. Just now, if he didn't notice that she was merciful, causing those people to entangle her and almost get hurt, he would not have noticed the struggle in her eyes. She couldn't pass the test of her conscience. Since it was so, then he would give her a push. He would force her to recognize this reality. If she could accept it, then she wouldn't use her hands to condemn her conscience. If she couldn't accept it, then it didn't matter. Anyway, his ability was enough to protect her, and he didn't need to put her in a dangerous situation. But the result, she did not disappoint him. She did it. Xiao Su had never been a soft-hearted person. He was like this to his enemies and to himself. But he was full of tenderness towards Chu Qingyan. It doesn't matter. If you can't do it, just stand behind me. You don't need to charge and break through the enemy lines. I don't need you to show your face. Just stand there obediently. Chu Qingyan already couldn't tell how much blood was on her hands. She was glad that she was wearing red today. If she was wearing white, she would have been covered in blood. Sword light flashed, you and I were heartless. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. She casually dealt with one, then flew in front of, flowing light. Together with him, she dealt with the 4 white-clothed assassins. Flowing light, these people don't seem very powerful. Taking some time, Chu Qingyan asked. Hearing this, flowing light gave a rare smile. Your subordinate thinks so too. Then leave these 3 to me. Chu Qingyan left this sentence and entered the middle of the 3. She drew a sword flower and waved it towards one of them. Flowing light looked at the elegant sword move, and a faint smile appeared in his eyes. These white-clothed assassins were actually not weak. They would be experts in any country. But against them, even the strongest tiger would be beaten like a cat. The fact that the young princess could have such a feeling proved that she had grown up. When a person stood at a high position, she could see even higher. Those who were weaker than her could only be looked down upon by her. He wouldn't tell her this because she still needed to keep improving, so that she could keep up with master's footsteps. Moreover, there was always someone better. If the young princess became arrogant because of his words, then wouldn't their hard work in training her be in vain? Chapter 525. After a fierce battle, the snowy ground regained its peace. The boundless land was now dyed red with blood. Snow plum blossoms bloomed one after another. It was enchanting, yet austere. Chu Qingyan was panting. She had used up too much of her energy. She glanced at the ground, sheathed her sword, and slowly walked back. She left the rest to Xiao Lai Qi. They were more experienced than her and knew what to do. Chu Qingyan looked at the tall and slender man standing not too far away. Her eyes rippled a little, but she did not understand what she was feeling at that moment. Her steps were firm, and her thoughts were heavy. When she was right in front of him, Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. It was like the sun had just cleared up after the rain, and the snow had just stopped. At that moment, the sun shone brightly. She was confident and magnanimous. I did it. What did she do? She didn't kill without batting an eyelid. She did it. She protected his promise. This wasn't the modern world. Kindness was rewarded, and evil was punished. This was a corner of history. The strong preyed on the weak. Only the strong could uphold justice. She wanted to protect her family and the people she cared about. She had to become stronger. Very good. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Deep in her eyes, there was a hint of a smile. Her smile was noble, cold, and gentle. His little phoenix had finally spread her wings and flew. At this time, Chu Qingyan's father jumped over. He circled around his daughter and said, Kai Kai, you have the style of a great general. Wow, you're awesome. Chu Qingyan's mother also walked over. She carefully checked her daughter's hands and feet. She was relieved when she found that she wasn't injured. Mother, you don't have to worry. None of this blood is mine. Chu Qingyan chuckled. She no longer had the same solemn and cold aura as before. Kai, you scared mother to death. If someone told her a year ago that her daughter would become a dragon or phoenix among men, she wouldn't have believed it. But seeing her performance today, Chu Qingyan's mother couldn't help but face this reality. Mother, this path is your daughter's own choice. I hope that mother can fulfill my wish. Chu Qingyan knew her mother's worries. The scene of her fighting a bloody battle must have frightened her mother. At this point, he could only make up for it afterwards. Yes. How awe-inspiring, great general. Women are not inferior to men. Father Chu suddenly interjected, and then ran out to grab Qinggua's sword to play with. Chu Qingyan could tell that her father had regained some of his memories. At the very least, he remembered that he used to be a general. It seemed that Yan Luo's treatment had been very effective. Chu Machen's mother patted her hand gently. She wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. In the end, she seemed to have made up her mind about something. As long as you're happy. As soon as she finished speaking, Chu Qingyan really wanted to reach out and hug her reasonable mother in front of her. She could understand and accept what she had done and what she would do in the future. But because of the filth all over her body, she resisted the impulse. Seeing her daughter's red eyes, Chu Machen's mother sighed. After leaving the capital for so many years, she had been homeless and humiliated. She had to take care of her foolish husband and take care of her eldest daughter. She had long let go of her mentality. As long as her family was safe and sound, she didn't ask for anything else. Qingyan. Chu Qingyan heard Big Ice Cube calling her and quickly walked over. What's the matter? Before I'm cured of the poison, you'll be in charge of all the personnel changes and orders of the fierce cavalry. Do you have any objections? Xiao Su lowered his eyes and looked into her big bright eyes. His voice was as cold as the cold wind. He knew that the little girl was very malleable, so he had to strike while the iron was hot. It wasn't that he hadn't planned to train her before, but that the timing wasn't right. But now was the right time to train her mind, train her willpower, and broaden her horizons. This was what he had always wanted to do. Chu Qingyan looked at him seriously, then blinked. She asked a little naughtily, "You want to be lazy? Can I say no?" "No," he answered solemnly. "Then I'll be taking orders when I'm in danger." Chu Qingyan made up a good name for herself, then walked valiantly toward the people who were cleaning up the battlefield. "Strong man, green gourd, don't leave anyone alive. Find a place to bury these corpses. Don't let anyone know where they are." Because these people were all men of sacrifice, they couldn't get anything useful out of them. Therefore, they didn't leave anyone alive to prevent them from going back to Gao Gao. Cicada, Liuguang, you two go ahead and scout the way. Be careful. If there's an ambush, report back immediately. If you're discovered, light the signal immediately. We'll rush over to help. Since there was an ambush for the first time, there would be a second and third time. Their hearts were already exposed. Even if those killers weren't lying in ambush ahead, some were already on their way. They couldn't let their guard down. 7-star, big face, let's continue on our journey. Clean up the traces of our journey and create traces in other directions. Don't let anyone know where we're really going. Using this method to confuse the enemy and delay the time they were discovered. Master had just handed the fierce cavalry to the little princess Consort, and the little princess turned around and gave 3 orders in a row. Her actions were so swift that it made people click their tongues. And it had to be said that these 3 orders hit the bullseye, making people wholeheartedly convinced. Strong man, green gourd, receives the order. Cicada, Liuguang, receives the order. 7-star, big face, receives the order. The fierce cavalry all bowed slightly and respectfully responded. For so many years, the fierce cavalry only recognized Xiao Su and didn't recognize anyone else's temperament. It was as famous as their swift and decisive actions. Even the Sichuan emperor couldn't make them submit. But today, they bowed slightly to Chu Qingyan, which was a kind of affirmation of her. This was the first time other than Xiao Su that they showed their respect to someone. The little princess Consort was intelligent and resourceful. She stood up at the crucial moment and disregarded her own safety for master. She gritted her teeth and persevered. She had a gentle and generous personality. She could attack or retreat. This kind of person was worthy of their master. Chu Qingyan looked at the black mass of people and the corners of her lips curled up. In the past, in the eyes of the fierce cavalry, she was just a dispensable person that had nothing to do with their life or death. But now, she did it. She saw her existence in their eyes. Although they only expressed their respect today and didn't really submit, this was already a historical improvement. Good, listen to the orders. She waved her hand and unknowingly revealed a domineering aura. This was something that even she didn't notice. Yes. Everyone performed their duties and followed their orders. They were orderly and silent. This was the fierce cavalry that made the world tremble in fear. Chu Qingyan secretly gave a victory sign to Xiao Su and smiled brightly. This smile seemed to have softened the snow that covered thousands of li, and also softened the person's ice-cold eyes. The wind blew and her sleeves fluttered, like a pear tree dancing. Chapter 526. Just as Chu Qingyan expected, there was more than one ambush ahead. There were at least 3 ambushes, and they were all led by different people. Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue, big ice cube, it seems that you have made too many enemies. Xiao Su's lips curled into a cold smile. They're just malignant tumors that I've eradicated after committing all sorts of evil deeds. Now, they were like jumping clowns. As soon as they heard news about him, they acted immediately. There was nothing to fear. Chu Qingyan nodded. Big Ice Cube was conscientious in serving the country and the people, but he had offended those officials who were heartless and did not work for the people. Unfortunately, these people were very vengeful. That was why they tried to kill Big Ice Cube time and time again. Moreover, some of them were defeated by Big Ice Cube on the battlefield. They were unwilling to accept it and took advantage of the time when he was not paying attention to them to make a move. In this world, the most unpredictable thing was the human heart. After Chu Qingyan finished lamenting, she felt very fortunate. They had overcome all difficulties and finally arrived at Shang country. Those people thought that they had set up a tight trap, but they did not know that the mantis stalked the cicada, and the cicada turned into a big yellow sparrow. In just a few hours, those people were cleaned up by the fierce cavalry. At this time, they were already standing on the ship heading to the capital of Shang country. At this time, the sky was already dark. Chu Qingyan looked back and could still see the snowy mountain peaks. Unfortunately, as the ship moved quickly, the snowy mountain range behind them slowly became smaller and smaller. Finally, it became a line and disappeared into the river. In front of them, the river was getting wider and wider. Soon, it became a long stream that stretched as far as the eye could see. A cool breeze blew, and the water was still. Only the sound of the sails could be heard in the cold wind. On the top floor of the ship, there was a hall where one could see the river. There were a few tables and several chairs. The workmanship was exquisite, but one could not tell how expensive they were. These were all large ships that the wood spirit had brought people to build overnight. The bottom of the ship was very high and there were dozens of small holes at the bottom that could be used to store bows and arrows. Although the planks of the ship weren't made of any precious wood, they were thick and sturdy and wouldn't be easily broken. It could be said that although these ships didn't look very impressive, they could be used to attack and defend. If used in a naval battle, they would be very useful warships. Chu Qingyan, Xiao Su, and Yi Lingfeng sat in the hall. Through the open window in front of them, they admired the river. The crescent moon rose from the eastern mountain and hung in the sky. The moonlight was like a white silk, rippling on the water. The river and the moonlight, it was beautiful. Chu Qingyan held the teacup but did not drink it. Instead, she used it to warm her hands. Turan just came to report that Hualing will meet us at the port tomorrow. Chu Qingyan's fingers tapped on the edge of the teacup. Her fingers were a bit itchy from the heat. When she was training on the snow mountain, her fingers were frozen by the snow. In the end, she developed frostbite. Every finger was swollen like a carrot. Although it was better after applying medicine, it seemed to be acting up now. But she endured it. She did not use her fingers to scratch it, because the more she scratched it, the more itchy it would be. Her strangeness did not escape Xiao Su's eyes. He pulled her hand in front of him and looked at it seriously. Then he took out a medicine bottle from his sleeve. He opened the bottle, dipped his finger in the medicine, and carefully applied it to her fingers. At this moment, Yi Lingfeng, whose soul had flown out of his body, came back to his senses and saw this scene. He could not help but wink at Xiao Su. "Yo, I didn't know that our cold and heartless His Royal Highness, who doesn't know what gentleness is, would one day be so nice to someone. TSK, TSK, TSK. I didn't believe it before, but now I do." The cold on her fingertips made the discomfort subside a bit. But when she heard Yi Lingfeng's teasing, Chu Qingyan wanted to roll her eyes at him. Unfortunately, her eyelids were heavy and she did not have the strength. She ignored him. Xiao Su opened his mouth. "I believe that you're asking for a beating right now." Chu Qingyan did not hesitate to give him a thumbs up. By the time he retracted his hand, Chu Qingyan had already applied the ointment. After fighting for an entire afternoon, she was exhausted. Without further delay, she excused herself from the two of them and returned to her room early to rest. After Chu Qingyan left, Yi Lingfeng returned to his relaxed and lazy self. However, there was a tinge of doubt in his eyes as he asked, "Tell me, why did you order the Earth Spirit to ask me to stay behind?" Xiao Su took a handkerchief from the side and wiped the remaining medicine on his hand. He raised his eyes to look at him. "It's about Duguqing. Do you want to hear it?" Hearing this, Yi Lingfeng put away his frivolous appearance and propped himself up. His smile disappeared as he said in a serious tone, "You know I want to hear it. Don't keep me in suspense." "I'm not keeping you in suspense. I'm just worried that you won't be able to take it." Xiao Su threw down the handkerchief in his hand and looked back at him calmly. "Tell me. I'll feel worse if you don't tell me." For his good friend to have such a reaction, the matter would not be simple. Yi Lingfeng thought of her leaving in a hurry and suddenly panicked. However, it was as if an invisible hand had appeared in his heart and suppressed his emotions. Seeing his serious expression, Xiao Su said, "Dugu Qing is not an ordinary girl. She is the daughter of the Empress of Shang country, the eldest princess of the royal family of Shang country." Hearing this, Yi Lingfeng's expression changed slightly. So she was a princess of a country. The best thing about her was that she could always give her own unique opinions when talking to him. Her identity was noble, so he did not have to worry about her. He could return to Jiang country directly without having to pay her a visit. He thought bitterly. As if seeing through his good friend's thoughts, Xiao Su shook his head. However, a few days ago, the royal family of Shang country announced that she fell off a cliff and was seriously injured. She is still unconscious. Not only that, the emperor of Shang country was assassinated 20 days ago. Shang country is in chaos. Dugu Qing's twin brother, Dugu Qing, who is also the crown prince of Shang country, has temporarily taken over the government. It is confirmed that he will ascend the throne next month. What? Yi Lingfeng was stunned. This news was like a bolt from the blue, making him unable to react. This news came from Shang country just now. This is an open secret in Shang country. Xiao Su looked at his good friend sympathetically. He had not told the little fellow about this because he was afraid that she would be too emotional and would not be able to accept it. Seeing Yi Lingfeng's expression now, Xiao Su felt that his decision was correct. He would tell the little fellow about this when he reached Shang country's capital. Xiao Yeqi must have thought so too. That was why Turan hid this news and only reported it to him. It could be seen that Xiao Yeqi was starting to learn to protect her. This was a good start. Chapter 527. Why did she suddenly fall off the cliff? Her martial arts are not weak. How did this happen? Yi Lingfeng's fingers on the table began to tremble slightly. Xiao Su looked at him and felt that he was a stranger. It was as if he had never seen him lose his composure like this in the few years that they had known each other. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Could it be that Yi Lingfeng's feelings for Dugu Qing had already seeped deep into his bones? I am not very clear about the exact situation. I only know that the Shang country's imperial palace has sealed off all information. People can only enter but not leave. The imperial physicians of the Imperial Academy of Medicine are all staying overnight in the palace. None of the imperial physicians are allowed to leave the palace. Hence, even if Hu Ling wants to find out, he can't. Xiao Su felt that the Shang country's crown prince's order was a little abnormal. It seemed like he was guarding against something. However, when he thought about the assassination of the Shang country's emperor and Dugu Qing's accident, he felt that this was all a conspiracy. Seeing his good friend immersed in grief, Xiao Su remained silent for a moment before saying, "The imperial family is as deep as the sea. There is a struggle for power and conspiracy. The slightest carelessness can lead to eternal damnation. No matter if you are an emperor today, a princess, or a minister tomorrow, you may become a ghost under the blade of a sword or a prisoner tomorrow." The Shang country's emperor and empress have a deep relationship with the two princes and princesses. From this, it can be seen that someone is plotting against them. I heard that the Shang country's imperial court has been in turmoil recently. The princes and factions are fighting for power. However, this stability was only on the surface. Those who plotted against them were probably lying in wait for an opportunity to strike. However, Xiao Su did not explain this because the outcome could be that Dugu Qing stabilized the imperial court and smoothly ascended to the throne. It could also be that the crown prince's faction fell and the imperial family was replaced. If that was the case, Dugu Qing was afraid that it was still too early to say everything before they reached Shang country. Hence, he felt that it was better for Yi Lingfeng to see it with his own eyes. Xiao Su still wanted to say something, but when he saw Yi Lingfeng's soulless appearance, he stopped himself. He sighed and got up to leave. Perhaps what he needed now was to calm down. Only Yi Lingfeng was left in the hall. He didn't notice that Xiao Su had already left. The teacup in his hand was already cold. He just held the teacup in a daze and maintained this posture until late at night. Sometimes, when one person did something that moved the heavens and the earth, the other person might not be moved. And when a person did something insignificant, but she spent all her courage and energy, then even if she boiled a bowl of black medicine or made a bowl of terrible pastries, the other person would still be jealous. Because before she felt touched, there was a prerequisite. Ling Feng, look, the medicine I brewed for you is ready. She carried the bowl of medicine over with a bright smile on her face. She did not notice that several blisters had already appeared on her hand. She was a princess of a country, loved by all, but she was willing to sit in that small kitchen, laughing and chatting with the servants, adding firewood to make medicine for him, washing her hands to make soup. Her precious body was exposed to things that she had never done before, but she was willing to do so because of him. Bits and pieces of the past came to him like countless fragments, and then pieced together in front of him to form a picture of the two of them getting along. When the last scene changed to the scene in the courtyard, he clearly heard his own voice rejecting her. Xiao Su mentioned the time when Emperor Shang was assassinated, and he couldn't help but think of the last time they saw each other. If he hadn't broken her heart, perhaps she wouldn't have left without saying goodbye with a heart full of grief and indignation. She fell off the cliff and was seriously injured. She is still unconscious. His good friend's words rang in his ears. Yi Lingfeng, you bastard. He couldn't help but give himself a hard slap. Shao Qing, you must be well. Otherwise, I will not be able to absolve myself from the blame for this lifetime. I haven't personally said sorry to you. Also, I like you. Yi Lingfeng stood up in a daze. He walked to the windowsill and looked at the surging waves. He prayed in his heart that the wind would be a little stronger, so that the ship could arrive earlier. The lonely figure by the window seemed to be one with the dark night, making people feel inexplicably sad. He advised Jun Mo to cherish the golden-threaded robe. He advised Jun Shi to marry a young man. If there are flowers to pluck, pluck them straight. If there are no flowers, break the branches. If there are flowers to pluck, pluck them straight. If there are no flowers, break the branches. After Xiao Su left the hall, he turned around and walked towards Chu Qingyan's room. At this time, Xining just came out of her master's room. As soon as she closed the door, she saw Xiao Su and immediately bowed to greet him. Xiao Su raised his hand slightly to let her get up. Is your master asleep? Xining smiled when she heard that. Master said that she was very tired today and went to bed early. Does your highness want to go in to see master? Xining said and was about to open the door, but was stopped by Xiao Su. No need. He was worried that today's scene would have a big impact on her heart and she wouldn't be able to sleep. Now that he knew that she was asleep, he was relieved. Looking at His Highness's leaving figure, Xining couldn't help but smile. His Highness was so good to her master that he even came to see her when she was asleep. Chu Qingyan was indeed asleep, but she didn't sleep well. After Xiao Su left, she was haunted by nightmares, which were all bloody and horrible things. Broken hands and feet, fire and smoke, blood-red eyes, and unwilling shouts. Her face was pale, cold sweat kept flowing down, and her expression was very painful. Xiao Su returned to his room and changed into casual clothes. Turan knocked on the door and came in. What's the matter? Xiao Su poured a cup of water for himself, then poured another cup, and pushed it in front of Turan. Then, holding the teacup, he leisurely leaned against the back of the chair and looked up at him. Turan didn't stand on ceremony and sat down. Master, of the 4 groups of attackers today, 3 of them came from Xixian. One of them was an assassin hired by the corrupt official with the surname Su whom you punished severely on the way to the mine. There was also a group of men of sacrifice from the Fu family. There was also a group whose subordinates we have yet to find out. The last group came from the Jianghu sect, the Moon Palace sect. Turan picked up the teacup and took a sip before continuing. I found out that our whereabouts are no longer a secret among the upper-class nobles of Sichuan. Someone must have deliberately spread the news. The person who spread the news should be the mastermind behind the sneak attack that you haven't found. Xiao Su didn't spend too much effort to get to the point. I will ask Water Spirit to investigate properly, but it's a pity that these people didn't leave any valuable keepsakes. Turan was a little distressed. Turning the teacup in his hand, Xiao Su's gaze landed on the green pattern. He said calmly, "Leave the investigation to Water Spirit. You should focus on the love grass. If there's anything, report it to Qing Yan first. The Fierce Blade Cavalry will also listen to her in the future." Mu Ling was slightly surprised, but his good manners prevented him from turning pale with fright. He asked hesitantly, "Master, are you planning to give the Fierce Blade Cavalry to the little princess in the future?" Chapter 528. Xiao Su frowned slightly because of Turan's question. Although he didn't think about it, he seemed to have done it subconsciously. Shao Lai Cavalry will only recognize 2 masters in the future. He answered his subordinate's question with one sentence. Although he didn't answer directly, with Turan's intelligence, he understood his master's meaning. But Shao Lai Cavalry was brought up by you. 10 years of relationship and less than a year of knowing each other, it wasn't that he didn't recognize the little princess, but some things needed time to settle down. Moreover, the members of Shao Lai Cavalry were all elites. If it wasn't for his master's leadership, any one of them would have flipped the table. Therefore, he felt that it was as difficult as ascending to heaven to make the Shao Lai Cavalry acknowledge a master. Xiao Su smiled and said with confidence, "This is not something that I can decide. It depends on her own efforts." Turan thought carefully and then his eyes lit up. "So, Master asked the little princess to take over today's matters to let the little princess have more contact with Shao Lai Cavalry so that she could enter their inner circle step by step?" As expected of the subordinate who understood him the most, he understood him immediately. If it wasn't for this reason, would he have tolerated them using the excuse of training to tease her? Turan also connected the dots of the training that Shao Lai Cavalry gave the little princess on the snowy mountain. He couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. Fortunately, they discovered the little princess's plasticity and gave up the idea of training her to pass the time. Otherwise, they would have to carry 100 pounds of weights, practice martial arts in the middle of the night, jump from a high altitude. It was that simple. When Turan left his master's room, he found that his clothes were soaked with sweat. But when he looked up at Xianyu, he slowly revealed a gratified smile. In the past, he had wondered who could make his master have the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Now, he seemed to have seen it. It seemed that he needed to remind his subordinates not to always find fault with the little princess. Although they didn't have any bad intentions, there was no guarantee that his master would remember it and punish them one by one. As soon as Turan left, a white figure appeared in front of Xiao Su's door. Knock, knock. Xiao Su had just taken off his robe when he heard a knock on the door. He thought that Turan had returned, so he answered casually, "Come in." However, a petite figure pushed open the door. Xiao Su's hand paused in the middle of unfastening his belt. He squinted and looked over. After confirming that it was the little fellow standing outside the door, he couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you asleep? Why did you suddenly run over?" At this time, Chu Qingyan was hugging a pillow. Her long hair was draped over her shoulders, but it was a little messy. Her eyes were red, as if she had just run for her life. In reality, she was indeed running for her life, but in her dream, there were many demons and ghosts chasing after her. "I suddenly feel like resting in your room." She stepped in, pretending to be calm, but her voice had already betrayed her. As soon as Xiao Su heard her slightly hoarse voice, he felt that something was wrong. Then, with a glance, he saw her small white feet peeking out from under her skirt as she walked. His eyes turned cold as he immediately walked over and reached out to carry her to the bed. "Why didn't you put on your shoes and socks and ran over here?" Xiao Su scolded as he stuffed her into the quilt, while his hands grabbed her feet without any disdain, using his internal energy to help her expel the cold. Xiao Su's actions were all subconscious. By the time he reacted, he had already done it. Big Ice Cube, although you are cold, your hands are very warm. The familiar warmth flowed through her body, making her sigh involuntarily. Xiao Su curled his lips slightly, then said, "No need to change the topic. Tell me, what happened?" To be able to make her disregard her image and run over to find him in such a state of shock, it was obvious that something had happened to her. Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue. Big Ice Cube was really too smart. She didn't even make it obvious, okay? He actually saw through her at a glance. Promise me that if I tell you, you won't laugh at me. Otherwise, I won't tell you. Chu Qingyan said proudly. Xiao Su felt that her request was a little undesirable, because he hadn't heard what happened yet. How could he guarantee that others wouldn't laugh at him? But he still nodded his head. Seeing that he agreed, she couldn't help but reach out to touch her nose, and said a little bitterly, "I had a nightmare, so I didn't dare to be alone. Xining has already gone to sleep, and the others are also tired. I didn't want to disturb them, so I could only come to find you." Xiao Su felt a little uncomfortable that he wasn't first in line for her, but she still came to him after going around in circles. This made up for the imbalance in his heart. And, is it because of what happened during the day? Xiao Su had already guessed that he had specially made a trip tonight to confirm her condition. Now, she had indeed reacted. Chu Qingyan nodded her head unnaturally, and then she said softly, "Am I very useless?" She was clearly full of confidence during the day, but in the blink of an eye, she had become like this. She felt that she had lost all her face, and when she ran all the way here, she must have fallen into the eyes of the Shaolai cavalry. How was she going to face people tomorrow? Looking at the vexed little fellow, Xiao Su couldn't help but find it funny. Feeling that her feet had recovered their temperature, he let go of her hand, then stretched out his hand to tidy up the blanket on her body. Then, his gaze landed on her body, his eyes gentle. "If you say that you're useless because of this, then wouldn't I be even more useless back then?" What happened back then? Chu Qingyan's attention was drawn to his words. What was it that could make the Big Ice Cube think she was useless? She asked curiously. "When I killed someone for the first time," he said indifferently. "Huh?" Chu Qingyan was surprised. "Wasn't that the same as her today? When I was 5 years old, I killed a person who was about to stab me with a knife. That person was a palace maid who had served him since he was young, and had been by his side for 5 years. He didn't expect that one day, the tip of a knife would suddenly be pointed at his chest without hesitation. 5 years old? What kind of age was that? Naive and unaffected, the age of playing with butterflies and mud. And what he picked up was not a toy, but a weapon, just to defend himself. Then, I had to keep my eyes open until dawn for half a month." Xiao Su said it casually, but Chu Qingyan was so sad that she wanted to cry. Big Ice Cube, she opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. "So, don't be afraid. This is nothing, because if you don't protect yourself, perhaps the one who will fall will be you." Xiao Su curved his eyebrows and smiled gently. Chapter 529. Big Ice Cube, they're too despicable. They actually dared to lay their hands on a 5-year-old child. If I was there at that time, I would definitely help you beat them up. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already completely forgotten her fear, and threw herself into the anger of those people who harbored evil intentions towards the Big Ice Cube. Seeing that his goal had been achieved, Xiao Su raised his hand to cover her eyes, and gently said, "So now you don't have to think about anything. Have a good sleep, and everything will be over." The voice beside her ear was mellow and deep, like the sound of a modern cello. It was so pleasant to listen to that it made her feel relaxed, and the warmth from his eyes made her feel even more at ease. "Big Ice Cube, it's okay. In the future, with me here, no one will bully you again." Before she fell asleep, she did not forget to say this to him, although her voice was already drowsy, and no one could hear her clearly. Okay. Xiao Su smiled faintly. Only when the people under his hand were breathing evenly did Xiao Su move his hand away. Looking at the bed, the peaceful sleeping face, the smile in the corner of his eyes slowly disappeared. It was true that he killed someone when he was 5 years old, and it was also true that someone wanted to kill him. The insomnia for half a month was fake. Although he was only 5 years old at that time, he was already used to the dark side of the palace, and had long been used to it. Since he was young, he had been taught to be alert at all times, just to protect himself. So when he was young, he would always hide a dagger on his bed, just in case. Unexpectedly, when he was 5 years old, it really came in handy. And he told this matter to the little fellow, just to let her put down the burden in her heart. If the first nightmare was not dealt with properly, then for a long time, she would be haunted by nightmares. This was not what he wanted to see. So what if it was a lie? To her, his concern had always been real. Xiao Su helped her tuck in the corner of the blanket, and then put on a cloak. Sitting on the side of the bed, he looked at her, and finally closed his eyes. Late at night, everything was quiet, only the river breeze and the sound of the sails fluttering could be heard. The boat steadily moved forward, and everyone fell asleep peacefully. Dawn came quickly. When Chu Qingyan woke up, the sky was still dark. Because of the devilish training in the snow mountain, she would wake up at that time every time, and today was no exception. She stretched lazily. Last night, she actually had a dreamless night until dawn. The quality of her sleep was simply too good. Just as she was about to get up, she saw the person leaning against the bed. Just as she was about to get off the bed quietly, she didn't expect that her movements would still alarm him. Morning, Big Ice Cube. Her heart softened when she saw Big Ice Cube open his eyes. Big Ice Cube was so cute. Unfortunately, this blankness did not last for long. Soon, his eyes became clear again. Yes. After washing up, the two of them went to the deck. At this time, the sun had already risen above the surface of the river, shining brightly. Chu Qingyan, on the other hand, was in a good mood. Not only was it because of the sunrise, but it was also because of her peace of mind. She looked at the person beside her. It was all thanks to Big Ice Cube. Otherwise, she would not know how to face the bloody night. The boat continued to move on the river smoothly. Time flew by quickly. In another half an hour, they would reach the port. Chu Qingyan was very excited as she thought about it. However, she still felt that the atmosphere was a bit strange, especially Yilingfeng. She didn't know when it started, but he was distracted. She also didn't know what happened to him. However, they were about to reach the port and she didn't have time to ask him. She wanted to be a caring big sister, oh, no, a caring little sister. When they reached the port, Huo Ling had already prepared a carriage to welcome them. Everyone gathered together and rushed to the capital city without stopping. After a whole day of driving, they finally arrived before sunset. However, before entering the city, they had to be interrogated. Shang Nation's capital city's interrogation was even stricter than Junlan Nation's and Jiang Nation's. However, because Huo Ling came here early in the morning to make preparations, the group smoothly entered the capital city. After entering the city, everyone found a place for Huo Ling to rest. After a day of running around, everyone was tired. They first returned to their rooms to bathe and clean up. The food was also ordered to their rooms to eat. Perhaps it was because Chu Qingyan had participated in the fierce cavalry's devil training, her ability to resist pressure and fatigue had a qualitative leap, so she was still full of energy at this moment. She and Xiao Su sat in the room to eat and didn't go out to join in the fun. However, once they finished eating, Chu Qingyan couldn't hold back her temper and wanted to go out for a stroll. Xiao Su thought for a moment and agreed to go out with her. She originally wanted to hear about Huo Ling's recent progress on the love grass. However, she didn't know what he had arranged and he hadn't appeared yet. Therefore, she wanted to take a stroll around Shang Nation's capital city. Have you heard? Princess Qing has been in a coma for almost half a month. Someone said that she probably won't live to see New Year's Eve. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su had just come downstairs when they heard people talking about Shang Nation's imperial family at the dining table in the main hall. She immediately became interested and pulled Xiao Su to sit down. She ordered a pot of tea and pretended to drink tea. However, she was actually eavesdropping on their conversation. It would be New Year's Eve in 3 days. However, the atmosphere of the new year in Shang Nation's capital city wasn't very strong. It could be said that it was almost non-existent. This was because they had just held a national funeral a few days ago. Logically speaking, the citizens wouldn't make a big fuss this New Year's Eve for fear of being gossiped about. How do you know? Didn't you say that the imperial physicians who treated Princess Qing didn't come out? A man didn't believe and questioned. Of course I know. The daughter of my sister-in-law's brother's mother's uncle's daughter is a servant in the palace. Therefore, my news is quite reliable. It is said that her injuries are very serious and she won't live for more than 3 days. The man who spoke first said proudly. At this moment, a cup fell to the ground and shattered. Chu Qingyan heard the sound and looked over. It was Yi Lingfeng. This person who usually paid attention to his demeanor would actually lose his composure in front of so many people. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Brother Xiao, I want to go and find her. Do you have any way? I beg you. Yi Lingfeng was in a daze for a moment. When he saw Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan, his eyes instantly turned cold. He quickly walked to Xiao Su with a panicked but sincere expression. Young Master Yi, what are you doing? Chu Qingyan was a little puzzled. She turned to Xiao Su and asked, Big Ice Cube, what's wrong with young Master Yi? Xiao Su knew that he couldn't hide what was going to happen from her. In the end, he told her everything. Dugu Qing is the eldest princess of Shang Nation. She is also the Princess Qing that the citizens were talking about just now. The moment he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan was stunned. You lied to me? This was her first reaction. She was already on the verge of crying. It's true. Xiao Su nodded. He had already guessed that she wouldn't be able to accept this fact. That was why he didn't tell her. At this moment, a few men dressed in casual clothes walked to Chu Qingyan and the others. They asked in a low voice, Are you Miss Chu Qingyan? Chapter 530. Chu Qingyan was still grieving over the fact that her good friend was seriously injured and was about to die. Now that some people suddenly appeared, Chu Qingyan was not in the mood to pay attention to them. However, when Xiao Su saw their attire, he narrowed his eyes and asked, What's the matter? The leader unfolded the painting in his hand and compared it with the one they were looking for. After confirming that it was indeed the people they were looking for, he immediately beamed with joy. He lowered his voice and said to Xiao Su and the others, I'm Zhang Kai-1, a first-rank armed bodyguard serving His Highness the Crown Prince. I'm here on His Highness's verbal order to find you. His Highness the Crown Prince? Chu Qingyan repeated these words. She looked confused. She did not remember knowing such a person. Zhang Kai smiled. His Highness said that he is the twin brother of your good friend. Your good friend is our Shang Kingdom's princess. Chu Qingyan suddenly widened her eyes in disbelief. His Highness is Dugu Qing. On the street, she had laughed at her and said that he looked like her younger brother. It was because of this that she knew that Dugu Qing had a twin brother. Zhang Kai felt his scalp tighten when he heard this little girl calling His Highness by his full name. But His Highness had told him not to be calculative no matter what this girl said. Zhang Kai nodded. Miss Chu, His Highness wants to summon you to the palace. He said there is an urgent matter. Unfortunately, you are no longer in Jiang Kingdom. Fortunately, His Highness asked us to send people to guard the city gate. That was how we found your traces. At this moment, Yi Lingfeng heard their conversation. His voice trembled and he asked, Is your princess well? Zhang Kai shook his head heavily and did not say a word. This action caused everyone's heart to sink. Let's enter the palace. Xiao Su immediately ordered. Zhang Kai looked at this person. He had a fierce aura. Although he did not release it, it made people feel a sense of fear and inferiority. Yes. Zhang Kai lowered his head and did not dare to delay. The group rushed into the palace that night. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Light snow began to fall from the sky. White silk was hung everywhere in the palace, solemn and oppressive. Chu Qingyan looked at her surroundings, and all she could see was white. She felt a strange sense of sadness in her heart. Big Ice Cube was calm and indifferent, while Yilingfeng was silent and sorrowful. Chu Qingyan felt sad for Yilingfeng. If he had treasured it back then, he wouldn't have ended up in such a state. She still had some complaints about Yilingfeng. She felt that he had deeply hurt Du Guqing, but seeing his eyes full of regret, she couldn't bring herself to be angry with him. Because compared to anyone else, he was the one who felt the worst. They arrived at the imperial study. He learned from Zhang Kai that the crown prince had been traveling outside until something happened in the imperial palace. Now, he had been staying in the imperial study to deal with state affairs. Other than eating and resting, he basically never left. With such a big thing happening in the palace, the crown prince must be under a lot of pressure. Zhang Kai asked the palace servant who was waiting outside to go in and report. Soon, the people in the imperial study opened the door. Chu Qingyan looked at Xiao Su. Xiao Su patted her shoulder. You have to face what you have to face. When she heard this, she nodded heavily. The person in front of her knew her best. She was most worried about hearing news about Du Guqing. She was afraid that it would be too serious for her to accept. But Big Ice Cube said that she had to face what she had to face. She stepped out without hesitation. When Chu Qingyan and the others entered the imperial study, they saw the person sitting behind the desk. He was wearing a complicated and exquisite crown prince's yellow robe with a soaring dragon embroidered on it. The bright yellow color made his lips red and his teeth white. His hair was tied up by a jade crown and fell behind his head. His face was like a jade crown, handsome and elegant. There was a spiritual aura in the corners of his eyes, and his voice was gentle. He was simply a male version of Du Guqing. Big Sister Dugu. The person in front of her lifted her head. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but cry out. Xiao Su and Yilingfeng also looked at the person behind the desk. Xiao Su frowned, while Yilingfeng stared at her. You are Miss Chu, right? Du Guqing's expression didn't change because of Chu Qingyan's shout. Instead, she asked gently. Her voice was clear and magnetic. It was different from Du Guqing's delicate and pleasant voice. Chu Qingyan was stunned for a moment before replying, I am. I've heard Imperial Older Sister mention you before. Does this consort look a lot like Imperial Older Sister? Many people have said this before. Du Guqing smiled. When she smiled, the corners of her eyes lifted slightly, revealing a radiant smile. She grew up with her brother. In the past, in order to take classes and exams for him, she would often dress up as him. Even his gestures, eyes, and smile were imitated to perfection. Sometimes, even their parents couldn't tell the difference. Moreover, she had always taken voice-changing medicine, so her voice was different from her own. She was confident that she could fool everyone present. However, she hadn't expected that Yilingfeng would also be here. The moment she saw him, she almost gave herself away. Fortunately, her strong self-control pulled her back. She decided to stop looking at him to prevent her mind from being disturbed. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. The person in front of her was very similar to Du Guqing. However, the way they talked and laughed was completely different. However, her instincts gave her a very familiar feeling. Apologies, I mistook you for someone else. Chu Qingyan restrained her earlier loss of composure and spoke naturally and generously. Miss Chu doesn't need to be so courteous. When Imperial older sister wrote to this consort, she often mentioned you. She said that she hit it off with you. It's very rare for someone to be constantly mentioned by her. It can be seen that she really cares about you as a friend. Duguqing smiled slightly. But I heard that she was injured. How is she now? Chu Qingyan stepped forward with an anxious expression. Hearing Chu Qingyan mention this matter, Duguqing thought of her unconscious younger brother lying on the bed. A trace of grief flashed across her face. Her injuries are serious. The imperial physicians are still trying to extend his life. Duguqing said gloomily. Extend his life? Yi Lingfeng immediately lost his calm. He looked at Duguqing with disbelief written all over his face. Extending his life and not treating his injuries. These two words clearly showed that his life was hanging by a thread. He could die from his injuries at any time. Yi Lingfeng's expression surprised Duguqing. This person seemed different from before. However, there were too many things to worry about right now, so she couldn't think too much about it. That's right. A trace of grief appeared on Chu Qingyan's face. Can we go see her? Not for now. The imperial physician said that it's not appropriate to visit her right now for fear of aggravating imperial older sister's injuries. This consort knows that you're all very worried about her, but please forgive us, Duguqing said with a frown. Duguqing furrowed her brows. She couldn't let them see her. Otherwise, their identities would be exposed. This was also the reason why she had imprisoned those imperial physicians. We can understand. Chu Qingyan's expression was downcast. Xiao Su, who was beside her, placed his hand on her shoulder and gently patted her to comfort her. Actually, I invited you to the palace today because Imperial older sister told me to give you something. Duguqing spoke at an appropriate time. May I ask what it is? Chu Qingyan was confused. Chapter 531. What you've been searching for all this time, Duguqing looked at her with a smile, is the love grass. The surprise was like fireworks falling before their eyes, then blooming. Xiao Su was a little surprised. He lowered his head to look at the little fellow who was stunned on the spot. A strange emotion suddenly surged in the depths of his eyes. There was joy, relief, and faint gratitude. Chu Qingyan didn't know what words to use to describe her current feelings. She looked blankly at Duguqing. Can you say that again? I'm afraid I didn't hear you clearly. Duguqing rarely saw this silly side of the little girl and couldn't help but feel pity for her. My imperial sister knows that you've been searching for this herb, so she asked Ben Gong to investigate. Coincidentally, a few years ago, on my imperial father's birthday, an imperial physician called Ma Wu presented the seeds of this herb to my imperial father as a congratulatory gift. But because no one knew how to plant it, it had been kept in the national treasury. Ben Gong found it when checking the account books. But I don't know if this seed can still be planted after so many years, and if it can be planted, will it still be able to cure your poison in time? When she finished speaking, Duguqing waved her hand to instruct the palace servants beside her to bring the box over. This is the seed of the love grass. My imperial sister can't personally hand it to you, so Ben Gong will do it on her behalf. Chu Qingyan reached out with trembling hands to take the box. The ice-cold box pressed against her palm still made her feel a little incredulous. She felt that it was too unreal. Just a few days ago, they were still desperately rushing to Shang country to find the love grass. In the blink of an eye, the love grass was already in her hands. Happiness came too suddenly. It was hard to believe. Big ice cube, quickly pinch me. See if it hurts. Chu Qingyan turned to the person beside her and said anxiously. Chu Qingyan's childish words made Xiao Su's lips curl up. He raised his hand to pinch her cheek, his smile obvious. It's not a dream, don't worry. She nodded heavily. You should go back and develop the antidote as well. This is a command token for entering and exiting the palace. If you wish to enter the palace, just bring this command token with you. No one will stop you. Du Guqing handed the command token to Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan received it and thanked him with a smile in her eyes. Your Highness, may I take a look at Princess Dugu? Yi Lingfeng, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. Du Guqing turned to look at him. His eyes were filled with complex emotions. When their eyes met, Du Guqing's body trembled slightly, but it was only for a moment before she regained her composure. Whatever emotions were in his eyes had nothing to do with her, and she did not have the energy to think about it. She could only suppress the surging emotions in her heart. Royal sister can't be disturbed. If you want to visit her, come back in a few days. Du Guqing's tone was somewhat indifferent, seemingly not very fond of Yi Lingfeng. Hearing this, Yi Lingfeng's eyes darkened. He pursed his lips but didn't say anything. What identity could he use to meet her now? A businessman with no power or influence, and he had hurt her deeply. The confident and unrestrained young master suddenly had doubts about everything he had in the past. This time, I came to Shang country to see her. If it's convenient in a few days, I hope your highness can make an exception. Yi Lingfeng bowed slightly and said respectfully to her. Seeing the three of them leave the imperial study, Du Guqing fell onto the dragon throne as if she had lost her soul. Was that what he did just now? Why was he so insistent on seeing her? Didn't they say that they would go their separate ways? She closed her eyes, and tears flowed down her face. When she saw the little lass and the others just now, she really wanted to admit her identity, but she couldn't. The imperial power was in danger, and she couldn't relax at this time. She had no friends, no lover, and no imperial father. She could only rely on herself in the future. She suddenly felt a little sad. It was impossible for a person's life to be smooth sailing. Not long ago, she was still the favored daughter of the heavens, and was doted on by everyone. But now, her family was ruined. Her imperial father, who doted on her, passed away before she could see him for the last time. Her imperial brother, who would always stand in front of her and shield her from the wind and rain, was now in danger. Her gentle and virtuous imperial mother had to endure the pain of her husband's death, and also bear the worry of her son being injured and unconscious. Her long hair had turned white overnight. How could she say that she was tired at this time? Dispelling all the distracting thoughts in her mind, Du Guqing sat down again, picked up the memorial on the table, and started to read it. In the past, she didn't know how tired her imperial father was. Now, she held the brush and drew word by word with love. She still remembered that in the past, when her imperial father was reading memorials, she would run over to his shoulder and watch him draw cute birds and beautiful lotus flowers for her on the white paper. But now, she was all alone, all alone. The most lamentable thing was, things remained the same, but people were no longer right and wrong. The palace lantern cast a slender shadow on the ground, elongating it continuously. The moon was like a hook, and the lonely parasol tree locked up the sorrow of the courtyard. Whose tears fell, soaked the paper, scattered the cinnabar, and dyed whose eyes red. At this time, Chu Qingyan and the others had already left the palace and were rushing to the inn to give the love grass to Qing Yenluo and Ethereal, so that they could develop the antidote. The three of them shared the carriage. Compared to the smile on Chu Qingyan's face, Yi Lingfeng was defeated and lost, as if he had lost his soul. Ever since he left the imperial study, he had been at a loss. Young Master Yi, don't worry. We'll go back and let Ethereal and the others treat Sister Dugu's injuries. Their medical skills are much better than those of the Imperial Academy of Medicine, so there will be hope. Chu Qingyan comforted him. When she was in the study, she had heard about Du Guqing's serious injuries. She had been very sad, but she had suppressed her emotions so that she could call for help when they returned. Hearing this, Yi Lingfeng's face relaxed a little. He nodded. Right, I actually forgot that we can bring Miss Cheng and the others to save little Qing. Let's go back quickly. Xiao Su was not good at comforting people, and he had given all his patience to Chu Qingyan. So at this time, he could only pat his good friend's shoulder, indicating that he could rest assured. Seeing that Yi Lingfeng's face had recovered some color, Chu Qingyan sighed in relief. But when she heard him call Dugu Qing as Little Qing, Chu Qingyan was a little surprised, but then she understood. It seemed that Yi Lingfeng's feelings for Dugu Qing were very clear. But in the end, would the lovers be together? She was not sure. Because the world was unpredictable. Once back at the inn, Chu Qingyan did not care what time it was. She did not even knock on the door and rushed into Cheng Yenlua's room. Just as she stepped into the room, a weapon came flying at her. Chapter 532. Chu Qingyan tilted her head and nimbly dodged the weapon. When she steadied herself, she saw that the weapon was a neat row of silver needles stuck in the door. Sister Yenluo, were you trying to murder me just now? Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief and turned to glare at the person sitting on the bed. Cheng Yenluo adjusted her clothes and rolled her eyes at her. I didn't have the nerve to scold you. You should have knocked on the door when you came in. I was so scared that I woke up from my sleep and almost shouted that you were molesting me. Chu Qingyan scratched her head. She had indeed been too rash. However, after hearing Yen Luo's words, Chu Qingyan could not help but mourn for Kong Ling in her heart. Kong Ling was still able to react in time and insert a few needles into Chu Qingyan's body. Cough, cough. I won't do it again. Chu Qingyan realized her mistake and immediately corrected herself. I'll forgive you this time. Tell me, what happened? Why did you come looking for me in such a hurry? Did your big ice cube bully you? Cheng Yenluo irresponsibly guessed. However, would her big ice cube bear to lay a finger on her? She could only think about it. After Cheng Yenluo's reminder, Chu Qingyan finally remembered the purpose of her visit. She hurriedly took out the box and held it carefully. Sister Yenluo, we got the seed of the love grass. Quickly take a look and see if it can still be used. Cheng Yenluo glanced at the wooden box in front of her and suddenly felt a little dazed. Then, she turned around and was about to return to the bed when Chu Qingyan's surprised expression turned to puzzlement. Cheng Yenluo rubbed her forehead and said as she walked, Am I tired from the journey? I'm actually hallucinating. We've only been in the capital of Shang Nation for less than 6 hours and we've already found it. This is too scary. I need to sleep to catch up on sleep. Chu Qingyan listened to Cheng Yenluo's muttering and suddenly felt embarrassed. She grabbed Cheng Yenluo and cried, Sister, sister, you're not dreaming. Quickly help me take a look. The situation is urgent, there is no time to waste. Cheng Yenluo snapped back to reality and snatched the box from Chu Qingyan's hands. Why didn't you say so earlier? Chu Qingyan watched her open the lid of the box and heaved a sigh of relief. I told you, but you didn't believe me. Cheng Yenluo didn't say a word. She carefully removed the red silk and revealed the small green seed inside. It looked like a small mung bean. It doesn't look like it's damaged. Chu Qingyan moved closer and stared at the bean, sizing it up. Didn't you open it when you got it? With that, Cheng Yenluo picked up Little Bean and placed it under her nose to sniff it. Chu Qingyan shook her head. I didn't look at it. I was afraid that I would spoil it. Chu Qingyan's eyes were fixed on Cheng Yenluo's actions. She watched as Cheng Yenluo sniffed and stared at the bean. Chu Qingyan's imagination ran wild. Chu Qingyan hoped that Cheng Yenluo would not bite the bean, otherwise, the bean would be crushed. Cheng Yenluo frowned. Actually, I don't know much about the seeds of love grass. I only know what it looks like after it germinates. We'll only know the results after it germinates. Chu Qingyan's heart clenched as she asked, What should we do now? Don't worry, I'm going to plant it now. We'll know tomorrow morning whether it's a mule or a horse. Cheng Yenluo comforted her and placed the seed back in the box. Then she walked to the table and sat down. She picked up a pen and started writing down the things she needed. Do you need my help with anything? Chu Qingyan walked to her with the box and asked seriously. I need a quiet space. Don't let anyone disturb me. Also, I need everything on this piece of paper. Cheng Yenluo blew on the ink she had written and passed it to her. Chu Qingyan nodded. Then she called for a fierce cavalry and passed the paper to him, instructing him to purchase it. When she turned around after giving her instructions, she saw Cheng Yenluo looking at her with a half-smile. She couldn't help but laugh. If you look at me like that, I'll think that a flower has bloomed on my face. Unexpectedly, Cheng Yenluo nodded seriously. She rubbed her chin and looked a little teasing. A flower has really bloomed on your face. What flower? I don't believe it. Chu Qingyan spread her hands. A huge peach blossom. Cheng Yenluo smiled brightly. Nonsense. Chu Qingyan thought that this person was imagining things again. I'm not talking nonsense. I have to say that you're not a bad peach blossom. Your character is excellent and your influence is great. Moreover, you're gradually getting better. Don't you see that those arrogant fierce cavalry are also polite to you? Now, you can even order them around. Cheng Yenluo clicked her tongue. In fact, she couldn't say that the little girl was climbing up the social ladder. She could only say that her efforts and brilliance were enough to bear this peach blossom. After hearing Cheng Yenluo's words, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but imagine what a big ice cube with a peach blossom on her head would look like. However, she couldn't help but shudder when she thought of this image. The image was too beautiful. She didn't dare to look at it. Stop talking nonsense. Let's talk about something serious. Chu Qingyan puffed up her cheeks and glared at her fiercely. Alright, what else is there to talk about? I thought that other than your big ice cube, you have nothing else to do. Cheng Yenluo teased. Although Chu Qingyan wanted to bicker with her, she couldn't help but sigh when she thought of Dugu Qing. Sister Yenluo, Sister Dugu is seriously injured and unconscious. What? Cheng Yenluo, who had a carefree look on her face just a moment ago, was stunned when she heard this. What the hell is going on? Chu Qingyan told her everything that had happened today in full detail. After hearing this, Cheng Yenluo couldn't help but sigh deeply. The heavens are really pitiful. How could such a good girl be involved in such a thing? I don't like these things where people fight with each other. There's something wrong with my brain. Now that we don't know whether she's dead or alive, I want to ask if you can check her injuries and see if she's all ready. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and said with a mournful expression. If she fell from a cliff, she's probably injured her internal organs. I'm not good at this kind of injury. You can go to Murongju. He's more confident in this aspect than I am. Although the two of them had almost become strangers at this time, it was undeniable that she wouldn't deliberately hide things. As a doctor, the most important thing was to seek truth from facts. Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. Okay. Dugu is also my friend. I also want to see her, but there are priorities. I don't have the ability to save her. Let's develop your antidote first, Cheng Yenluo said with a clear mind. Chu Qingyan smiled. Okay, then I'll have to trouble you. Little girl, don't be so polite with me. Just don't forget to donate more money to our medical center when the time comes. Cheng Yenluo patted her head. Chu Qingyan blushed with shame when she heard this. This person was simply wasting her talent by not being a businesswoman. Chapter 533. The two of them chatted for a while. The swift cavalry had already prepared everything Cheng Yenluo wanted. Thus, Chu Qingyan was pushed out of the room. I'm going to start planting the grass now. You can come back tomorrow morning and witness the life and death of the love grass together. With that, the wooden door slammed shut in front of her. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose, which had almost been smashed. The saying, swift and decisive, was exactly what big sister Qing meant. She heard rustling sounds coming from inside and knew that Yen Luo had already started. She prayed silently in her heart that Yen Luo would succeed. The sky was already dark and it was late at night. However, she was so excited that she couldn't fall asleep. Thus, she turned and walked towards Big Ice Cube's room. She saw that his room was brightly lit and he should still be awake. Chu Qingyan was about to knock on the door when she heard Yi Lingfeng's voice from inside. Ethereal, do you have a way to treat her? At this time, Ethereal replied, I can't guarantee it. I have to wait until I see Miss Dugu before I can make a decision. Then let's go now. Yi Lingfeng said anxiously. Lingfeng, calm down. What time is it now? The earliest the palace will open is tomorrow morning. Xiao Su's cold voice sounded at the right time. It was like a basin of cold water that splashed Yi Lingfeng awake. As soon as Chu Qingyan entered, she saw Yi Lingfeng leaning against the back of the chair with both hands covering his face. Young Master Yi, don't worry. You'll know the result tomorrow morning. Go back and rest first. You haven't had a good sleep recently. In the past few days, Yi Lingfeng's eyes were getting more and more tired. It wasn't difficult to see that he hadn't slept well recently. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but advise him. Yes, we'll wait for the crown prince to finish court tomorrow morning and then enter the palace. Yi Lingfeng stood up. His body was much thinner than before. At this time, he slowly walked out of the room, looking a little lonely. Chu Qingyan looked at his back, not knowing what to say. After Yi Lingfeng left, Ethereal also planned to get up and leave, leaving some space for his master and little consort. Chu Qingyan did not understand his tactfulness. She stopped him. Ethereal. Young consort, do you have any orders? Ethereal turned around and asked. How confident are you about Big Sister Dugu's injuries? Chu Qingyan asked with a worried expression. Ethereal pondered for a moment before raising 5 fingers. 50%. Chu Qingyan frowned. The chances of success were too low. The reason is the same as what young Master Yi said. This subordinate wants to see the injury first. Another reason is that this injury has dragged on for nearly half a month. Even if the injury can be cured, it is not optimistic at this time. Ethereal knew that she had a close relationship with Dugu Qing, but he still answered truthfully. A doctor had to tell the truth to the patient's family. All right, I understand. You should also go back and rest early. Chu Qingyan's face was slightly pale, but she did not forget to call out to Ethereal. Ethereal nodded. This subordinate will take his leave. Chu Qingyan turned around and leaned on the table, her expression unreadable. At this time, a cup of hot tea was pushed in front of her. Chu Qingyan reached out to hold the teacup with both hands before raising her head to thank the person in front of her. There is no use for you to fret. What will come will come. Xiao Su said indifferently. Chu Qingyan pressed the warm teacup against her face, looking worried. I understand these reasons, but we can often convince others, but we can't convince ourselves. Xiao Su remained silent. The little fellow was right. He picked up the teacup and drank slowly. Actually, Big Ice Cube, I feel that there is something fishy. That Dugu Qing, do you feel that he is very familiar? Chu Qingyan was just sorting out what she had seen and heard today when she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She turned to ask the person beside her. Familiar? Xiao Su raised his brows, not quite understanding. It's him and Big Sister Dugu. The two of them give off a very similar feeling. Chu Qingyan sat up straight and then said seriously. Xiao Su was puzzled. Aren't the two of them twins? It's normal for them to be similar. Chu Qingyan shook her head. I know that they are twins, but there are no two identical leaves in the world. It's the same for people. I feel that Dugu Qing gives me a very similar feeling to Big Sister Dugu, or She had a bold guess in her heart, but she did not say it out loud. Or what? Or Duguqing is Duguqing. Xiao Su was a smart person. He knew what she was thinking from her tone. Chu Qingyan was surprised. The big ice cube's guess was too accurate. However, she only had a guess. Do you think so too? Chu Qingyan felt that she had found a resonance and was very happy. Xiao Su expressed his helplessness at her reaction. No. He didn't have much contact with Duguqing, so he didn't know her as well as the little fellow. He was just going along with her words. He was a person who valued reasoning and analysis more than he was good at judging cases based on feelings. Chu Qingyan was a little disappointed when she saw his reaction. Forget it. When the time comes and we enter the palace, I will observe carefully. Chu Qingyan was a little frustrated. Xiao Su did not comment. Big Ice Cube, Sister Yen Luo has already started to plant the herbs. She said that if she succeeds, she will be able to make the last antidote for you. Chu Qingyan had almost forgotten to share this news with him. Xiao Su smiled. Okay. Chu Qingyan's face was full of excitement. Big Ice Cube, what should I do? I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep tonight. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Can't sleep. There was something wrong with the Big Ice Cube's tone. Yes. She nodded in response. Let Liu Guang accompany you to walk around the capital. Chu Qingyan almost jumped for joy, but she put her hands down quietly. Big Ice Cube, are you joking? Come back in half an hour. He looked at her, a cunning look flashing across his eyes. Chu Qingyan raised her hands in surrender. I think I'd better go back to my room. Oh, I'm so sleepy. Good night, Big Ice Cube. She lifted her feet and was about to walk out. Half an hour? Even if her lightness skills were outstanding, it was impossible for her to walk around the capital in half an hour. The Big Ice Cube was obviously trying to scare her. However, when she stepped out of the room, she felt a gust of wind behind her. Before she could react, she was already being pulled toward the roof. Big Ice Cube, where are we going? Chu Qingyan pushed her messy hair to the back of her head and squinted her eyes as she asked. I'm taking you to a place to enjoy the scenery. With that, he took off and headed toward the southeast of the capital. Today, in the inn's lobby, he had inadvertently heard that there was a tall tower in the southeast. From there, one could see the Star Moon Lake, which was 15 kilometers away. The Star Moon Lake would glow during winter nights, so he wanted to take the little fellow there to take a look. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.